South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes.
Welcome back in, or welcome in for the first time. I guess welcome back in for the second time today on this stream. Of course, you saw Kenny White this morning, and now you have Sports by the Book Football Frenzy on a Friday. I'm Jeff Parles, and now joining me as always on these wonderful Fridays during football season, 2 hours of the best football talk you can find in the sports gambling space. Sportsbook director here at the South Point, Chris Andrews, in his Andrew Luck Stanford polo here today.
Well, I wore Andrew Luck shirt last week. I didn't want to double up on that, but I got Stanford playing Notre Dame, not my favorite school. Stanford.
Not the greatest of spots either.
No, I know. But like I said, Stanford saved my wife's life and saved my life. So, I'm a fan.
They saved the books a couple of times, too.
Yes.
They have, yeah.
On occasion.
That other voice is Vinny Magliulo, everyone.
Jeffrey?
As always, it's always great to be with the guys on these Fridays. Vinny, I told you this off the air the other day. You and I dodged a proverbial bullet with the Mets closing out the Phillies 2 days ago, because that game would be on right now during the show. So Chrissy would have had to have done the show by himself for 2 hours, basically. So,
well, pretty exciting stuff, and yeah, congrats to the Amazons. And by the way, congrats. I'm going to say thanks to the crew in the front row in our book.
Yeah,
wave out there, guys. You got to see we got our regulars that come in and watch the show and listen to the show. Now they're listening to it. And Sean Higgs from Texas is in.
Our good friend.
Sean Higgs, who follows us on social media as well, and good friend of the show.
Yeah, big fan of our guy Sean, who always loved chopping it up with him. I know you guys were able to talk to him before the show. I got about 10 minutes with him as well. Always loved talking to Sean. Very, very sharp fella there, that Mr. Higgs. All right, well, fellas, let's start in college football here tonight. So, real quick, there were supposed to be 4 games. There's only 3 because of Hurricane Milton that went through, and with a path of devastation down in the Tampa area. All of our thoughts with everyone down there.
Yes.
Just been a brutal run of it with Helen, and now Milton just right on top of it. So that, Chris, just real quick, that South Florida Memphis game that was scheduled for tonight, if you bet it before the move, but the move of the time of game, which is now going to go for tomorrow, you got to come in and play that other number, which is now at the bottom of the sheet.
Yeah, but very little action, before we actually moved the game. But yeah, if you were one of the few that did bet it before the move, you have to come in and bet it again. And I don't have the game time, Jeff, but it is going on Saturday.
12:35 Pacific.
12:35. Okay, great. And so not one of the real early morning games. So come on in, change your ticket. It's not on the parlay cards. You don't have to worry about that. So we did that. And by the way, we did a preemptive move, Cincinnati and Central Florida. We didn't put on the card, thinking, boy, that looks like it's right in the teeth of it. Look, everything looks okay there, though, now, as far as the game is going to go.
Central Florida and Cincy are going as planned. We'll get to that a little later. South Florida and Memphis are playing at the old Citrus Bowl, now Camping World Stadium in Orlando, so that is a venue change on top of a date change. For that one is Tampa. Again, really, really, really brutal stuff. All the video out of that city with how destructive Hurricane Milton was earlier this week. No artful way to segue, fellas, but let's go to tonight. Maryland and Northwestern, Big Ten rivals in this one, Chris.
Yeah.
Northwestern's offense has really struggled this year. And look, last year, David Braun comes in as the interim coach, replacing Pat Fitzgerald, who obviously had all the off-field stuff come to light. And Northwestern was one of the bigger surprises in college football. They won a bowl game here in Las Vegas last year.
I thought they'd be 1 or 2 wins.
You weren't alone in that.
I don't think I was. No.
And here they are. It's the regression to the mean in close games has occurred for Northwestern so far this year. The last 2 weeks, they were thoroughly outplayed by Washington and Indiana, losing by a combined 36 points. Now tonight, they take on Maryland in College Park. Maryland was on a bye last week. Indiana beat them pretty good, 14-point win for the Hoosiers in Bloomington 2 weeks ago. But right now at 10.5 on this one, you opened 10, got as high as 11, and now in between that at the 10 and the hook.
Yeah, we really did some pretty good two-way action. I'll tell you what, that's going to be a theme throughout this show.
That's always a good sign. That's Vinny's favorite.
It really is.
It gives you a chill, doesn't it?
It really. So we got a lot of two-way action. This is one of them. I mean, the initial push was on the favorite. We went from 10.5 to 11, now back to 10.5 because we got played. We took some money on the dog. But we're all over the place here. But as long as it doesn't go anywhere near the number, we're going to be in pretty decent shape. But I think it's going to be a pretty decent game. I'm not the biggest Maryland fan. They're a big rival with my team, Penn State. So I don't always care for them so much. But Northwestern, you're right, Jeff. A little regression to the mean. Not been a great year for them where they really exploded. I don't want. That's not right.
They were great in close games last year, and it just kind of regressed. It's natural. It happens in college football.
Tends to happen. Yeah. But I can see it. I made the number 12 myself, so no real strong opinion. I guess a slight shade to the favorite, but not much.
Move to the over. A little more over money. Not really surprising. Up to 46. I'm glad Chrissy brought up the two-way action, which is a theme this week, and that's what you strive for from our side of the counter. I mean, sometimes we make light of it, but the reason that I always make it a point to appreciate it is that's the art of being and the benefit of being the house, right? I mean, when you've got for the most part outside of money lines, but you have straddles there. When people are laying 11 at 10, you just want to have that two-way action and have the juice working for you. So that's an important component of the business.
Yeah, I want people to understand too. We're not necessarily looking for even action both ways, but every time like you get just that little ratio going and it's somewhat near 50-50, that really increases your odds. And you could just pencil it out mathematically. You take one bet, you're getting plus 110. But if you take 20 bets on each side, and without moving the number a whole lot, just go figure what you got, what your potential win is, and what your potential loss is, and that's really the art and the science of bookmaking.
That was the math class I did pretty good in, I must say.
Yeah, I had a class, analytic methods, and the teacher
sounds like fun.
It was, believe it or not, the teacher was like this kind of nerdy guy. But you could tell he made a wager or two along the way because he would talk about it. But he broke it down, and I tell you, I took 2 classes that really helped me a lot in my professional career.
That was
one was that, and the other one was stats. Those were good courses for led me in this path.
For you
music appreciation, not quite so much.
Oh, okay.
For you high schoolers and college students out there, look for those instructors and those professors that enjoy a wager or two.
Well, they know the real life. They can apply it.
They can apply it.
Apply it. Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of a institution that might know a thing or two about this industry, UNLV.
Yeah. Hospitality.
On the road tonight in Logan. Our buddy Matt Neverett on the call for local radio here in Las Vegas. Chris, you haven't moved the number all week on the side. It's been 19 the whole week. Hasn't moved. Total's been what's been the mover. 65.5 up the ladder to 67 on this game. I think we can count on one hand how many times UNLV has been this big of a favorite in a conference road game through their existence.
You might be able to count on one finger, Jeff. I'm not sure you need that whole hand. I made the number 17.5. I mean, Utah State's pretty bad, but I don't know. But, Jeff, surprisingly, we don't have much action on this. But you mentioned our boy, Matt Neverett. How proud are we of that young man? Great. And then he's doing UNLV football, and he just signed a deal to do UNLV basketball. Mm-hmm. I really, and such a good kid and smart, and I wish nothing but the best for him.
We oftentimes talk about, Chrissy, Jimmy, and I talk about remembering when we look at games today and we talk about players. Hey, I remember when his father played. I remember when his grandfather played. Yeah. Well, Matt's following in the footsteps of his dad.
Yeah, of course. Tim Neverett, of course.
Outstanding.
Dodger play-by-play guy.
Excellent.
Behind Joe Davis.
Did the Red Sox for a while, I think?
Red Sox, Pirates, yeah. Did a whole collection of teams.
Terrific.
Good for him.
Terrific.
Man.
So good.
And by the way, Tim's a pretty good guy, too.
He's pretty good.
Really good. Yeah. So good stuff. This game, nice to have the Rebels playing on back-to-back Fridays.
Well, they play more Friday games than Saturday games this year, Vinny.
That's good. I like it.
They'll get Boise in 2 weeks on a Friday at Allegiant Stadium as well. Utah State last week, Genty ran for 186 yards and a half. Didn't play at all in the second half in a 62-30 win for Boise a week ago against this Utah State club. All right, let's go to Tempe. Hey, Cam Rising is going to play tonight. How about that?
Are we
Is
sure?
he?
Are we
That's
sure?
the report as
That's
of this
the
morning
report?
from Brendan Murphy.
He's probable, right?
He is, according to Brendan McMurphy, will be in the lineup for Utah tonight. Bettors took that number up because of that report this morning. From 4 yesterday up to 6, 5.5 as well. Look, if Cam Rising is in, the Utah Utes are the best team in the Big 12. That's kind of been where I've been at least for me, that's where my head's been now. Iowa State might have something to say about
Absolutely.
that. Mm-hmm. They look pretty darn
Kansas
good after a
State
slow
too, right?
start.
Yeah, Kansas State too, yeah.
Well, all those teams will play each other down the stretch, so we'll figure it out even before Arlington. 5.5 on Utah, 47. And we've said it with Arizona State. I thought they were going to be the worst team in the Big 12. They are 4-1, and quite frankly, that loss was a little more competitive than that 30-20 Texas Tech.
Oh, okay.
30-22. It felt closer to being a more pure one-score game than an 8-point loss there for the Sun Devils. Kenny Dillingham has that program in the right direction at the moment.
Yeah, we're still high on the dog on this one. We opened the game 6. We're back to 5.5, but we've been kind of moving around a little bit in this game. Or Cam Rising, you talk about, is he in the lineup? Is he healthy, though, Jeff? I mean, that's the thing. I think they tried to play him a couple times last year, not so much this year, where he just, didn't quite have it. So, but, Utah, they're arguably the best team in this league, if he's healthy. And, that program is a very good program. Kyle Whittingham, a great coach. They got some big, strong kids seem to come out of that Utah program all the time. But this should be a good game here. What 7:30 start? So I'll be watching Frank Nicotero at that time, so I won't be able to watch that game.
Oh, you're going down.
I'm going down. Yeah,
there we go. Very nice, very nice. Frank at Jimmy Kimmel Comedy Club tonight here in town.
Yeah, good. No, this is another good game. Be good to see Rising back, right? To keep that division even more competitive. And this injury's a little different. Like this is his hand, right? He had some fingers, I think, that were the key. So we're going to probably find out right away as he's handling snaps and things. So we'll find out. Because we did hear how many times last year that he was probably.
I think it was 12.
And so would love to see him back. And it's listen. It's not only better for Utah; it's better for the conference.
It's better for us, too.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to see.
Know.
I always say we root against half these guys on a weekly basis, but overall, we want to see everybody do well. That's what's good for the whole racket.
You want to see teams at or near full strength.
Absolutely.
Let's go to Saturday, guys. This is this is a back-end loaded card. Early games, okay, not so bad, but as we said last week, it was a card that we didn't see much intrigue, and we ended up with total anarchy last week in college football. But going in Vegas rotation number orders, as always for this show, 123, 124, and this is a 8 o'clock Eastern game, and this is a monster game in the Big 12. Iowa State goes on the road to Morgantown to take on West Virginia. Was 3.5, now it's 3. Total's gone up from 51 to 54 in this game, and look, this is, for Iowa State, fellas, this is a moment where you're going to, at least for me, this is the moment where this can go from, hey, this is a good football team to, hey, I got to really take this team seriously. If they go on the road, yes, they're favored, but go on the road to a brutal environment in Morgantown and beat a West Virginia team that, yes, has 2 losses, but this West Virginia team is very talented and has looked good since they've gone into Big 12 play.
I actually lowered their home field advantage this year because I looked over the last couple of years, and
it's interesting.
It seems like it's a hostile crowd.
Very much so.
I've talked about that. It's a very hostile crowd, but they don't play that much better at home.
Interesting. Okay,
they really don't. I've been trying to keep solid track of that. Now, that being said, what did I make this game? I was right there. I made the game 4.
Okay,
so we're right there.
Yeah,
3.5. It's been a great 2-way action game. And this will be one of the games we got on tomorrow night. I'll be on one of the big screens. It's a Fox broadcast, and Iowa State, right in the thick of things as far as winning this conference. They're going to have a lot to say down the stretch. But I don't know. I have no strong opinion in this game. It's been back and forth between 3 and 3.5.
Laying 3, taking 3.5, right? So, you've hit a good point, Jeff, about learning and how big it is for Iowa State. it's just as big for West Virginia, who's a
It's
surprise
almost
team in the
basically
conference.
an elimination game for West Virginia.
This has been they've been a surprise, and so I think the biggest home field advantage that West Virginia has is sometimes it's a little tricky to get there. Right, Chrissy knows that.
You usually have to land in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, and
I thought you were going to say something about a burnt couch.
You got those too.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. Plenty of people I went to high school with went to West Virginia.
Me too.
Yeah, well, I would imagine so. But it's look, I'll tell you.
Betting it over, by the way. This game's up.
I mentioned
points.
that up 3 points on the over.
Yeah.
West Virginia was awesome last week.
Yeah.
I have to mention that they went to Stillwater and just beat up Oklahoma State, who's got a lot of problems right now.
They got a lot of
and
problems.
it's not like Garrett Green had to do much. He only threw 15 passes last week, and West Virginia won by 24. I think you take that 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, and I liked Oak State last week. I didn't realize how many problems they have, but that team has big problems, and Iowa State took advantage of it like they're supposed to do.
We talked about it last year with Oklahoma State. If you're going just based off of you taking their stats for how many games they were supposed to win as opposed to what they did end up winning, their stats indicated they should have won 4 less games than they did a year ago. So that might be another one of those regress to the mean circumstances for Oak State.
It's kind of interesting, right? Last year they started off slow, and then they made a pretty good run.
A significant run.
This year they started off much better, and obviously have fallen on hard times.
That win against Arkansas, in retrospect, had more to do with Arkansas handing the game away. I think more so than anything with Oklahoma State. All right, let's go to Pittsburgh. Well, whatever, we're keeping it in the area. I guess we'll go to Pittsburgh next.
Another surprising team.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Pitt is 5-0. How about that? 5-0 with Pitt. No one expected that. I don't even think Narduzzi expected 5-0. But Eli Holstein, the Alabama transfer, has been great. There's no arguing that. Chris, I'm a little bit surprised this number didn't come higher for one reason and one reason only with Cal. Mm-hmm. And I know you can't. It's a little more intangible than I know you would.
I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
But the way they blew that game last week. You're up 25.
Yeah.
You have Miami, a legitimate top 15 team in the country, dead to rights in your building, and you blow it all together look, it's one thing if this was an NFL team. All right, you get right back on the horse. You're professionals. It's very hard to ask 20-year-old kids to get back on the horse, travel across the country, no less.
That's the key.
And beat a team that is just finding ways to win left and right, regardless of what happens that day with Pitt.
Well, 2 things I want to mention on that game. I knew a guy many years ago, and he's sadly passed away, Larry. God, we always just called him the Snake. And he was, but I liked him. He was a good guy. But he always would bet against the heartbreak. Yeah. Whoever had their heart broken.
Cal
next
would be
game,
that case,
he would bet against. And Larry did pretty good over the course of time. Also, if anybody missed it, we had Bill Hillgrove, the voice of the Pitt Panthers, since I was, he's been the voice of the Steelers, the Panthers, been on WTAE News. We had him on the show yesterday with Frank. Mm-hmm. And any Pittsburgh people out there, first of all, I had to call him on the phone 2 days ago. Hey, Bill, I got your number, blah, blah, blah. As soon as he answered the phone, I'm like, man, this voice just takes me back to my childhood. Anyway, to get back to the game, he went to, and he's the Pitt announcer, but he says, he's biased, of course. He said, but he tries to be, neutral's not the right, but, objective when he looks at this team. So he went to some practices early in the year, and he said, boy, I know not many people think much of Pitt, but he thought they were going to be very good, largely because of Eli Holstein. And so far, he's been right. Now, we are getting pretty good two-way action on this game. We've been as low as 2.5, as high as 3.5 on this game. So we're all over the place. I think Cal also is one of those teams that's been a surprise. Certainly to me, they were. But man, I think, Jeff, you hit on it. And my old friend, the Snake, who's no longer with us, I know he'd be all over Pitt in this game. And gun to my head, even though my numbers come very close to that. Actually, I hate to say pure numbers. My numbers come to Pitt 1. But it'd be very hard for me to bet on Cal in this game.
What's interesting is there's not been a run on Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I mean, they're taking 3.5. This is another game where they're laying 3 and taking 3.5. So Now that may change, but I do think it's a tall order for Cal emotionally, right? And,
it's just so
and
hard.
the emotion in the college game seems to bear out more so than the pros. I mean, they're just that's also the level, right? So not a knock, but they're still learning, right? And how to deal with those kinds of things. But I think that the travel aspect too after that loss coming across country is a big factor. But I'm frankly a bit surprised that they're taking the 3.5 and it's not running higher.
No.
I'm a little surprised. Maybe this game hits 4 by the time we get to game time. Maybe it's a one-way ticket on Pitt tomorrow. But look, I'm with you. I'm a little surprised. But hey, usually again with Pitt, 5-0, unexpected 5-0. A road bump could pop up at any random time with that sort of team, like Pitt has been so far through 5 games. So
but they're sitting there saying, "Listen, okay, what everybody's talking about the ACC. There's going to be a title game in the ACC with a playoff spot on the line. Why not us, right?
Well,
this is a league game. This is a conference game.
Yeah.
That's just dawned on me.
That's the other thing, right? So
look, I will tell you, Vinny. After this schedule for Pitt is brutal down the stretch.
I get it.
So, but look, you got to keep racking up wins as long as you can. They get a trip to Dallas to take on the Ponies of SMU, who all of a sudden look like the team Vincenzo thought they were going to be going into the year.
Vinny's been touting them for a long time. They started off horribly, but
they look
looks
pretty
like
good
they finally got their feet under them.
Absolutely. So let's go to Lexington next. More of a Vincenzo connection here. Kentucky, 13-point favorites against America's darling, the Vanderbilt Commodores, who, of course, upset Alabama last week. You know what the most amazing part of that whole thing is? And I mentioned this with Vinny on Monday, where normally when you see a mega college football upset, it's kind of in the fashion of Notre Dame, Illinois. The team that's the big favorite has a bad day on offense. Their defense is just asked to, in the end, just do too much. And that's kind of what happened to Notre Dame against Northern Illinois. You very rarely see the 40-35 upset with a 23.5 point underdog.
What was that Northern? Like 14?
It was 17-14.
17-14.
Like you can sometimes see like a dead under game, bad offensive. It happens every blue moon. You don't see that type of stuff in college almost ever. And I just wonder for Vanderbilt, because 13 points to the casual bettor, like, wait a second, they just beat Alabama. How many 13-point underdogs at Kentucky? This feels right. It feels right even with the adjustments. It's just a matter of, will Kentucky's offense be able to produce enough? That's what the whole question of this game comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. Vandy went back and forth with Alabama last week.
Yeah.
Now Kentucky's defense we know is good, and they're going to have to rely on that defense to create opportunities for them in this game. But now, if you're Vandy, emotionally, is there a bit of a letdown?
Sure.
You wonder about that, and I think the fact of the matter is, though, they did take the hook in this initially, and now we're down to 13.
Yeah, a little bit of dog money here. My numbers came to 11. But I always think back, and if you haven't read the book yet, you should. It's Billy Walters' book.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things Billy says in there, he wants to quantify everything. Now, what's everything? At some point, you have to get into some subjectivity. How do you quantify what Vandy does? What Vandy did last week, and then goes into this number. I will say this, though. Chris Felica told me early, remember they played Virginia Tech that first game? And they were about a 14-point dog, I believe.
They were.
And Chris told me then, he says, I really like Vanderbilt. Just thought that maybe Virginia Tech was a little overrated and Vandy was underrated. But, it looks like he got both sides of that equation right. So I don't know. I think I made it 11. Gun to my head, I'd play the dog. But, again, hard to quantify the impact. I mean, they're 20-year-old kids. You think they had a good week with their girlfriends and stuff this week? I would say they did.
Emotional highs and lows in the college game certainly bear out more than in the pros.
Let's move to the next game. Not as an intriguing one as that Kentucky Vanderbilt game. I'm fascinated to see how Vanderbilt looks after what happened last week. I mean, if you told me Vandy wins the game, I wouldn't be totally floored. If you told me they lose 28-7, I wouldn't be totally floored. That is a high variance result game for me. NC State hosts Syracuse. This Syracuse team, I think, is pretty good. It kind of got me thinking, what the heck happened to them against Stanford a few weeks ago, where they lost at home. Came from behind, didn't get the fourth down stop. Stanford made the field goal at the Horn. Look, Syracuse looked pretty darn good against a legitimate top 30 team in UNLV here in town last week. I know there was a very controversial call in overtime. I get it. But Syracuse still had to make the drive at the end of regulation to force overtime, which was very impressive. Kyle McCord seems to have found the right level of football for him. They're 3 on the road at NC State. The only question mark I have, and the only reason I haven't laid Syracuse yet, is coming off an emotional game with a huge road trip here going from Syracuse to Vegas is a long trip. Now you're going back on the road in conference play against a team that has been one of the bigger underachievers in college football so far this year. You always just have to have the thing in the back of your head of, hey, is this the moment where NC State figures themselves out or not?
Have they covered a game yet this year, Jeff? I'm not sure they have. I don't think they have. They may be like 1 and 4. Something like that.
Also, NC State's coming off an egregious loss to Wake Forest last week.
Yeah, exactly.
They have not covered any games, Chris.
I made this number higher. Where's my notes? I made this number 6. We opened at 4.5. That's been all dog money. So evidently the handicappers feel that this is now dropped to the level where NC State can win and or cover this game. At some point you get to that. It's like a claimer, Vinny, and maybe you can't win the race against $100,000 claimers, but drop them down to 1,500, they're going to romp. So I don't know if we're quite there yet on NC State, but I did make this number higher. Jeff, like you, I think Syracuse has been pretty impressive. They had one kind of startlingly bad game, but against UNLV, and I think UNLV was definitely the right side last week. But got to give Syracuse credit. I mean, it wasn't just that one play; they played very well against a team that was that I like. UNLV was one of the games I gave out last week, but that I guess we'll talk about that a little later. But anyway, I thought UNLV would handle them, but Syracuse came and played very well. Besides that one call,
55 down to 52 on the total, and. McCall kind of has been in and out of the lineup too, right? For NC State, right? So, I think he's doubtful tomorrow, but that doesn't seem to dissuade the bettors at all. I mean, what do you have? 3 for 5 last week? I looked at the box score, and doesn't seem to matter much at this point with them. Although I think he's the reason why he was the starter, right? So,
again, he's not healthy. Also, on top of it,
not 100%. So I think he's doubtful. I don't think he's going to play tomorrow.
I would be shocked if he plays after the hit he took
last
week.
We may see some Syracuse money tomorrow, or overnight, I should say, and tomorrow.
Let's keep it in the ACC. A little more red versus orange, actually. Louisville goes on the road to Charlottesville to take on Virginia. So Louisville last week, guys, at home, loses outright as a touchdown favorite to SMU. And again, really, SMU is the better team all day long.
100%.
They were up big in that game.
And also, too, Vinny, you and I were on it last Friday. We thought that total was going to go up, and it didn't, and it blasted through all numbers. And I will say this for this game. Virginia's offense, look, last week, it took a long way for Virginia to get going. They needed some Boston College help, turnover-wise, that set up a few scores for Virginia. Virginia's quietly 4-1. Not really thought of as a real threat at all. And they're clear, and they're at least a bowl caliber team. 7.5 a toddler, as our friend Vincenzo says on this one. Total at 54. Louisville the favorite on the road, with Miami on deck next week, by the way, for the Cardinals.
Virginia was another one of those teams I bet against last week, and they did not look particularly strong. I think BC did a few things to kind of somewhat hand them that game. Or I think just BC, maybe I had them overrated. They did not play well, and they didn't look very good. I still made this number a little bit higher. I made it 10, so we're kind of going back and forth between 7, 7.5. I like the favorite a little bit, but you got to be careful with these road conference games. But I think Louisville responds after that. They really got their butts kicked last week against SMU, but I think they respond in this spot, and I kind of like them against Virginia.
Pretty good game in the midday slot at 12:30. Just not going to need a 7. We're we're not going to need Louisville by 7 in this game. It's going to be pretty simple, right? Because they're laying 7 and taking 7.5.
No feel for me in this one. I will say it is a weird spot for Louisville after getting drilled by SMU. You have Miami, which is arguably the biggest game of their season on deck.
Yep.
Weird spot here for Louisville. That'd be the only hesitation. And I'm kind of with you, Chris. Even though Virginia's a little bit better than I thought, they're still probably 6-6 ceiling when it's all said and done. All right, let's go to a game that's usually the biggest game on the card in the SEC. And it's at best.
It's not.
At best third in the conference this week, maybe even lower. Tennessee, Florida. There you go. 2 touchdowns at home for the Vols off of their head-scratching loss to Arkansas last week. Florida, you know what? I got to give Florida a little bit of credit. This looked like this season was going to devolve into an all-time disaster down there. And after really getting manhandled by A&M, I know the opponents haven't been great, but you know what? They went on the road, handled their business against the worst team in the SEC in Mississippi State. And last week, they were the right side all the way through against Central Florida, a 24-13 win. Look, we know Tennessee has historically, especially in recent history, has gotten owned in this rivalry by Florida. But this is a spot where you would imagine off of that loss that Josh Heupel there will be no prison taking no prisoners with this one. Would not shock me if Tennessee runs Florida out of the building here, especially if we get an early season-like effort from the Gators in this game, Vinny.
Well, I think what's going to depend on is how they respond, how they rebound, because they can't afford another loss, right? So, especially after last week. Now, are the bettors waiting for 13.5 to show? Probably. But if not, I suspect this number will, during the course of tonight and tomorrow, head back up. I mean, again, it opened 16. It's time for them to realize, look, it's a reality. Last week was a reality check, and teams need that sometimes. Now, how do they respond to it is up to them. So that's what's going to be interesting about this game. Money showing for the over too. I mean, we're on the verge of being up almost 4 points to the over in this one off the 54 opener.
Of course, every game has different situations and essentially a life of its own. I did like this number higher. I thought the opening number was even a bit low on that side. We opened 16, down to 14. It is starting to come back a little bit. But, the fact is there's no real dominant team this year in college football. I mean, you could make a very good case for Ohio State. And that's really about it, as far as like a dominant team. Now, how's Tennessee going to respond? I don't know. What's Bama going to do? What's Georgia going to do? What's Mississippi going to do? We got a whole lot of question marks this week. I think Mississippi comes out strong. I think they beat this team who has shown some signs of being okay. But overall, I think Tennessee, I think they have the horses, and I think Heupel likes to step on the gas. He doesn't like to take off, at all. And I think it's a good spot for Tennessee to make some amends from last week. I kind of like the favorite here.
I'm with you. This would only be a lay at Tennessee in this spot. It would not shock me. Team total over probably on Tennessee as well. There you go. I mean, Tennessee scoring 42 points in this game at a minimum would not shock me. Especially, again, if we get a bad Florida effort, it could be even higher for Tennessee in this one. All right, another shade of orange. Clemson goes on the road to Wake Forest in this one. So Deacons got a win last week in Raleigh against NC State. Again, NC State has been messy, to say the very least. Look, Clemson borderline somewhere in that 10 to 15 range at this point. They really stabilized the ship after that horrible second half against Georgia. From 20.5 to 21, 60.5 to 63 now on this game. How about that? Betting the over in this Clemson game here, Chris.
A little bit of dog money, nothing serious. I think we moved half a point off of the opener, so nothing really serious. And then Debo Sweeney, not my favorite guy for a variety of reasons, but give credit where it's due. The guy can coach. He took this Clemson, when he took over Clemson, they were very much just a middle-of-the-road ACC team. He's won a couple of national championships. They've been in what was the tournament a couple of times. So the guy can't coach, and he did straighten out this team after the debacle of the second half, but we've been saying it all year. Georgia has a chance to do that to a lot of teams. They haven't done it to too many, really, but they did do it to Clemson. But I thought the number's right there. I think I made the number 20 in this game, so it's just right there.
I've definitely righted things since that first game against Georgia, but now they're winning games that they're supposed, quote unquote, supposed to. Right now, this is another one. I mean, they're a 3-touchdown favorite here, just about. So, how do they continue to get better and prove and play their way into the playoffs? Right. That's the task now. So, to Chris's point, it's up to Dabo to get them believing and getting it done.
I think Clemson at this point, it would be a horrendous disappointment for them if they don't make the ACC title game. Just the way that this all breaks down, they got to at least
have to play their way there, right? Yeah, they have the opportunity to do that.
They're going to be favored in every game left on the board.
Yeah.
I mean, they just are. You should be able to win all these games, get to Charlotte, and then look, if you win in Charlotte, guess what? Clemson's probably going to be the number 3 seed in the college football playoff when it's all said and done.
I mean, their main competition would be Miami, who,
even though they won, we saw their flaws again.
A lot of flaws in that team. Lots of flaws. Yeah. So don't tell me Clemson can't beat them. They most certainly can.
I think they would, honestly.
Yeah, maybe.
And I don't love Dabo either, but I know he's better than Mario Cristobal. I know
Game
that.
situation.
I know that for a fact.
Yeah, down to the fourth quarter. Yeah, I would agree with you.
Less than a 2, or maybe right now on a neutral, Miami's only about a 2-point favorite.
I would very happily take the dog in that spot if we do get
1.5, 2.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me.
I got him 3, a 3-point difference.
Would you? Well, I'll ask this question in December if we get Clemson in Miami. But there is one question in my head that we'll talk about maybe in 2 months from now if that ends up being the ACC title game. All right, Central Florida hosts Cincinnati. UCF is they were the sexy pick in the Big 12. Yep. Hey, you're taking someone down the board, take the Knights. The last 2 weeks, and this is also coupled with a miraculous comeback in Fort Worth against TCU the week before these last 2 weeks. Colorado beat them 48-21, and the game wasn't even that close.
You're correct.
Florida just outclassed them, and this is supposed to be the weakest Florida team in a long time. What are we doing down here if you're Central Florida? You have more talent than the record shows right now. Now you're playing Cincinnati, who, look, you both know I'm not a fan of Scott Satterfield, but this team has been a lot better than I thought they would be, and that includes that ridiculous loss they took to Pitt earlier in the year. And, look, they were a missed field goal from overtime in Lubbock 2 weeks ago against the Texas Tech team that's much better than we thought. Central Florida's 3.5 at home in Orlando at the Bounce House with a total of 58.5 right now.
I don't feel so bad because even Paul Stone, this was one of his teams. Coming in. So, we love Paul and respect the hell out of him, but a bunch of us missed the boat on this team. And I guess I'm a little slower to adapt than I should be because my numbers still came higher on this game. But like you said, Jeff, you look at these last 2 efforts, they had no business losing like that, even though it was at Florida. And Colorado, 48-21 was not that close. No. I mean, Colorado just totally boat raced them. I think Colorado is one of those teams. Deion can be a lightning rod in a lot of ways. And a lot of us, me included, didn't think that they were going to be very good this year. Deion famously wouldn't talk to a CBS reporter because somebody on the staff said that he was the second worst coach in the league. But Colorado's probably a little better than we thought, or a lot better than we thought. But UCF, I haven't downgraded them enough. And the more I look at this one, I think my number was off. I had this number a little higher. But we've been doing pretty good business on this game. Between the 3 and the 3.5. And that's probably, I would say, probably the right number right in there because Cincinnati is not that good.
No movement on the total, really. 58.5. To Chrissy's point, it's just going to be a matter of we keep writing tickets and not needing UCF to win by 3.
Yeah,
it's pretty that
simple. Would be the key.
Yeah, pretty simple for us.
Let's keep it on the coast. We'll go to Chapel Hill. Kind of Murphy's Law year for UNC, right? Just everything that can go wrong has gone wrong for them. Of course, Max Johnson breaks his leg right out of the gate, even though they won that game in Minneapolis week 1. 70 to James Madison, blow a 20-0 lead against Duke. Last week against Pitt, they get a big-time break in the first half. with a pick six that Holstein inexplicably threw, and they couldn't take advantage. They were clearly the wrong side for North Carolina against Georgia Tech here. Now it's 4 with the Yellow Jackets. Look, Georgia Tech, again, it's kind of a hard team to evaluate because all of our first look at them was upsetting Florida State, and then Florida State's ended up being terrible.
Right.
So they're one of the harder teams in America for me to figure out. I don't have a problem with this number at 4 with Georgia Tech on the road, and I don't have a problem with a 60, but who knows how good the Yellow Jackets truly are, because the real tests on their schedule they have not completed so far this year.
Well, I made the number exactly what the opening number was 6. I thought that was a fine number, but it's been all UNC ever since then. So we're down to 4. I think we may get a little bit of money coming back the other way eventually. So I think it's gotten down to that point. That's another team, Jeff. You talked about it. Murphy's Law. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong with this team. And Georgia Tech, I could see where they are a bit unproven. We don't know exactly what they are. But I think this number now has gotten low enough where I could see a play on North Carolina or on Georgia Tech.
It's interesting. It's just a lack of belief, I think, on Georgia Tech, and they're definitely better than we thought. But I think to Chris's point, it did. The thing about it is, initially it went up. I mean, I did the first bets were on the favorite, right, Chris? I think it went to 6.5. I think
so, yeah.
And it's just been a steady run on the dog here. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, but I could see where there'll be some Georgia Tech money again.
Mm-hmm.
We benefit from having a 24-hour book and being open all night. So it's not just like we're going to wait till 11 or 12 o'clock tonight and then have to wait till 6 or 7 in the morning. So there'll be plenty of action on this one. It'll head back up, I think.
Let's go to West Point next. Army undefeated welcomes in UAB, who has just been, by any stretch of the imagination, a disaster so far this year. Trent Dilford probably going to be able to go play 300 rounds of golf again after this year. Army is 27.5 in this one, fellas. How about that? At a total of 55.5. Chris opened 26, got as high as 28, so 27.5. Not quite in the middle of where we were started, but at least we found the threshold on what people are willing to take with the Blazers in this one on the road against, again, Army. And Navy are both still undefeated. They've been as good of stories as anyone in college football so far this year.
Well, yeah, they
have a real shot.
AAC, yeah. They definitely, one of them has a chance to get in there somewhere. This game has probably garnered as much action as any game on the board.
Oh, of course.
Why not? We had a couple of outfits are high on the favorite, and I got some comeback play from some other sharp outfits on the dog. I made a number 24.
Okay.
And I guess I can be a bit hard-headed in making adjustments at times. And I think maybe I have not quite adjusted yet for exactly how good Army is, because I do think they're very good. Now, are they going to play a slow-down game? And I don't think they do. I'm still looking at that, 3 yards on a cloud of dust offense that they had been running for the last couple of years. And I'm not sure that's their style of play anymore. I tend to favor the dog a little bit, but not much, because I got some real sharp players on the favorite. Although, like I said, I got a couple other outfits on the dog, but I think they may just be playing a number that finally reached a threshold where they thought they could take. But this should be a great game.
Always a surprise, right? Every week there's a game or two that surprises us in terms of how much betting interest that it gets, and there's always a game you look at and say, "Well, it's a pretty good matchup," and it's, well, wait a minute, how come they're not betting it? So,
yeah.
But we did find the threshold here, and it was 4 touchdowns. So, and that, again, sometimes that's what we're looking at. It's a bit of a search, right? Where can we get some buyback? Well, we found it. 4 touchdowns for UAB.
Yeah, look, the one thing I will say, whenever you're playing a service academy, if you don't feel like tackling that day, you give up 70 points. UAB last week, by the way, fellas, gave up 71 to Tulane. They already have one Service Academy matchup. They gave up 41 to Navy back in September. So, look, I know you don't love going higher, especially when it's a 4-touchdown line, but if UAB has no interest in tackling, there might not be many numbers that don't get there on Army when this is all said.
Well, you always see these kids, and I've been saying it for years, the service academies, these kids play hard.
Oh, yeah.
Every time. And they're oftentimes outmatched. Doesn't matter. These kids play hard from the opening gun to the final gun. They're just in this game, and and I'll say it one more time, these are the guys you want defending the country.
That's right. Discipline.
Let's go to Champaign, Illinois next. Chris, they're finally not betting Purdue this week.
So wait, slow down.
Hold on a second.
Go ahead.
Wait, not so fast.
Not
so fast, my friend.
So 20 to 22.5 though on this game on Illinois. All right, well, go ahead. I'll let you go on this.
I guess the Purdue quarterback was out.
Yeah, Hudson Card, yeah.
Who's not very good anyway. Okay, let's start there. But I think we got down as low as 19.5. Mm-hmm.
20 to 19.5 on the initial.
Yeah, 20 to 19.5. Then we were up as high as 22. And then now here come the money back the other way. So once again, they didn't let us down. Here comes the Purdue money. So this is
so ridiculous.
I got a lot of numbers on my chart here, Jeff. I mean, they're all over this. And, we talked about the Army game garnering a lot more interest than we thought money-wise. Well, here's another one. I mean, Illinois, they're, I guess, okay.
Good luck, everybody.
Yeah. And then Purdue, we know, has been one of the worst teams in the Big 10 or whatever we're calling them now. But, this game has garnered just a ton of business. And, it's in that 12:30 window. And you know what? I'm going to have to watch this damn thing, which doesn't make me all that happy.
And non-correlation, because the unders, there's money on the under. 3 touchdown favorite, money coming in on the under. 48 now. All right. Well, no, there it is. But, yeah, we did Purdue's just not disappointing at the betting counter this year.
Been a good friend of the bookmaker this
year. Incredible all the way around. All right, let's, another Big Ten matchup. Rutgers hosting Wisconsin. Wisconsin, we've talked about it. Again, quarterback injury really has done them no favors. But at least in this game, now I'm down to 1.5. Or actually, excuse me.
I think we went back up.
I clicked the wrong screen on my.
We back to 2. I think.
You're at 2.
Yeah.
Yes. Other books are at 1.5.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Back to 2 on the Scarlet Knights. How about this? How about Rutgers and Wisconsin total getting bet to the over? How about that? From 40 to 44 on this game, fellas.
Good point.
I don't particularly like anybody. I made Rutgers 1, which is right around the number. But Rutgers, all of a sudden, that's a pretty decent team. And Wisconsin's been very disappointing, really, the last couple of years. I like the coach there, but he hasn't really
not done a great job.
He's not done a great job, and he did a great job at Cincinnati, but not so great here yet. But I don't know. I haven't given up on him. My daughter, who went to a Big Ten school, she went to Penn State, had some good friends from Wisconsin, so. Not that I really root for him, but I certainly don't root against him. But I think this should be a pretty good game.
And Rutgers always tougher at home. I mean, it's a good program, tough school, tough. They play really hard. They all play hard, but their effort is good, and particularly at home. So, but you look at this, you go, how's Wisconsin a dog at Rutgers? Right? On paper, your first glance, but that again, good coaching. They kind of take on the mantra and the personality of the coach is a clear example of it. Mm-hmm. Fickle's going to take a little while. Fickle's got to, because he went there, and everybody was all excited thinking they were going to have this aerial attack. He hasn't gotten the players to
right.
You listen, when there's a big coaching change, it still takes time. The best coaches, they coach what they have. They don't coach what they want to be without the players. And I think it's going to take him a little bit longer, obviously, which is probably a bit surprising because of the transfer portal.
Right.
In fact, I think folks were inclined to think that he was probably going to get a lot more of his kind of players, or players that were going to produce more offensively via the transfer portal as well as recruiting. It hasn't happened yet, so I would advise a little bit of patience there. But yeah, this one here, this is going to be a good game. It's a good early game too.
Yeah, 9 a.m.
Nice
9 a.m. Well, again, I'm just floored that this total got bet up to 44, knowing these
That's
two
a good
teams.
point. Yeah, it is. It
A little bit surprised on that. All right, let's go Colorado and Kansas State. Dion was not pleased that this game is being played so late. It's an 8:15 local time in Boulder. I love these Big 12. Now it is Big 12 after dark as opposed to Pac-12 after dark. So, you know what, Chris? Colorado is one of the more intriguing. Well, they're intriguing for a lot of reasons. But I think one of the main reason I'm most intrigued by them now is a reason I don't think anyone anticipated going into the year. They somehow ended up being underrated. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of amazing with everything that's transpired with that program. But their only loss is to a good Nebraska team on the road when Colorado's offensive line really had no idea what they were doing at that point.
A massive payback spot.
Yeah.
And talk about
exactly.
emotion.
Monster payback spot for Nebraska. Right. Now here they are. Look, Chris, you opened 4.5 in this game. It's down to 3. It's basically 3 everywhere. Look, Kansas State's road game in the Big 12 this year was a disaster. They went to Provo and got destroyed by BYU in that game. Elevations at play too. This is a weird spot for Kansas State, and I don't blame the bettors for taking those early numbers on Colorado here.
Yeah, I still had K-State a little bit higher, but once again, I'm going to go back to what I've been saying a couple times here. I might be a little bit more slow than I should as far as making adjustments. But Colorado, you look at them, until they beat UCF last week, I would say they really didn't beat anybody. I mean, Baylor, I don't care so much for. Nebraska did boat race them. They beat
Colorado State stinks.
Yeah, Colorado State stinks. North Dakota State, not the same team that they're used to the last couple of years. Kansas State did get beat up pretty good in BYU. Got beat up bad in BYU. They had that magnificent punt return at some point. It was one of the best that I'd ever seen. Took care of Oak State, but I think Oak State. I was more unimpressed with Oak State than I was impressed by Kansas State last week. So I think right now, and this is a lot of things we can say about a lot of these teams at this point. I don't know what the hell we got. I really don't.
That's good. I don't disagree with you, though.
Yeah, I really don't. My first glances, I would say I like Colorado. I'd like Kansas State, but I'm not sure that's the right side. And I think, and again, I'm going to mention our good friend Chris Felica talked about. Maybe we have Colorado a little bit underrated, and I'd probably guilty of that myself. So even though I made this number a little higher, I'm not anxious to bet on K-State in this spot.
This is to that point, because Colorado is either a team you love to bet on, or you love them, or you hate them. And betting on in that regard is not going to be profitable for you. You can't bet emotionally, right? So you bet numbers. Speaking of numbers here, right? If this hits 2.5, then it's probably going to be a lay, right? And then you have, if you happen to get the 4.5, then you've got a 2-point middle going for you. But we'll see. I mean, that'll probably be the threshold, or maybe we'll start seeing some Kansas State money tonight. But there's no question, as Chrissy pointed out, Colorado is better. They address their lines, their offensive and defensive lines. Their offensive line is not as good as I know they would want it to be. Just ask Shedeur Sanders. But their defensive line is, and that was, I did see an interview with Deion Sanders, over the summer, and that was their focus because they have athletes. They know they've got a tremendous amount of talent at the skill positions, but he realized, listen, we've got to get better on both sides of the line of scrimmage. So defense has been better, and I think that's helped them this year to where they're at.
Let's keep it in the Big 12. BYU, who is undefeated still, they're shocking undefeated at 5-0. They're 3-point favorites against Arizona, who followed up their upset win in Salt Lake City with a total dud at home, losing to Texas Tech 28-22. And quite frankly, Texas Tech probably should have won the game by more when it was all said and done. Up 18-3 at halftime in that game. Okay, just a question of on this one. I like Brennan, the new coach at Arizona, but I don't think he's as good as Jed Fish, who's now starting to show a little bit of progress. I know it's weird to say progress for a team that was in a national title game a year ago, but Washington returned one guy from that team last year. But, for Arizona, you have arguably the best receiver in the country who's been mostly invisible since week one in Ted McMillan. And now you're going to one of the most surprising teams in the country. I'm looking for reasons to bet Arizona in this game. I know the bettors already have, but at 3, I don't know if I can get there on the Wildcats in this game, fellas.
Well, I mean, this is another game we're all over the place.
Yeah.
We're as high as 5, we're as low as 2.5, but business all along the way, both ways. So this is a game where as long as we stay away from any significant numbers, we're going to be okay. But a lot of action on this game. And what time is this one? This is that 1 o'clock Fox game.
Is the Bear at this game? Is he?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't texted him this week to find out. It might be. It looks like one of the things that they would do. But boy, BYU, another one. Paul, I saw out Paul Stone kind of missed the boat on UCF. He was on the boat for BYU. He had us pegged there. He said, you told me you have very underrated BYU, and I most certainly have by a ton. It's probably the team that I missed the most on this year. I don't know. You're looking to bet the dog. I'm kind of looking to bet the favorite myself if I was out there betting. I just think BYU, and that's a good, that's a pretty good home field advantage they have up there. And where's that? Is that Provo? Is that
Provo?
Where they play? Yeah.
Provo, Lavelle Edwards Stadium. Yeah.
Total holding steady.
49.5 hasn't moved.
Yeah. No, I mean, to Chrissy's point here, I don't think this is another pretty disciplined, program too, though. When we talk about the discipline of the academies, and typically these are some of the average age older players too, right? They go on missions and then come back, and so oftentimes when you're seeing BYU play football and basketball in particular, these are older guys playing, and that means a lot too physically. And I think that Chris hit it on the head. I mean, we definitely underrated BYU in the early power ratings, and we were putting games of the year together. So, but credit them. We've adjusted. I mean, and they just keep rolling along. But a lot of business on this game. I think that'll continue right up until kickoff.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's go to Alabama next. Tied, of course, off the stunner in Nashville last week. 23.5-point favorites lose outright to Vanderbilt for the first time since the 70s. And poor South Carolina. Last week, they draw Ole Miss off Ole Miss losing to Kentucky. That game was never competitive in Columbia, South Carolina. Ole Miss won big. And now you draw Alabama off losing to Vanderbilt. I mean, just ridiculously bad timing for South Carolina 2 straight weeks. You're back on the opener at 22. They did initially take South Carolina, but now 22 with the Tide with a total of 51 in this game, Chris.
Yeah, a little bit back and forth, 21-22. I actually moved it up today. One of our real sharp bettors, who's usually a dog player, bet me Alabama. Now, he had a lot of opposition on the dog, but we're kind of teetering back and forth. We were 21.5. I said, you know what? I kind of like Bama myself in this game. I'm going to follow this one guy who's really had a very, very good year. I'm not going to say too much about him, but he's kind of a new player here. But we looked up his history as a history in, let's say, some other facets in the gambling world. But he's had a pretty good year, and he's on the favorite, which I thought was a little bit strange. But he's on them, and my numbers came to 26 in this game, so I kind of like the favorite myself. So I moved it back up. But there's definitely been some dog play in this one too.
Yeah, pretty good two-way, considering it's three touchdown game. But I think there's going to be more support for Bama in this one to rebound.
Probably.
Yeah.
This feels like a dead nation spot here more so than anything. Just awful timing for South Carolina the last 2 weeks. All right, Notre Dame, Stanford here. Stanford 23.5 point underdogs in this game. Toggler between 23 and 23.5. That's a number you don't really toggle on much.
That could be a first.
45 the total for this one. Notre Dame really is nicely stabilized after that disaster against Northern Illinois in week 2.
They really had one bad game. I mean, that was it. Otherwise, they've really been pretty good. And, you just kind of scratch your head. It's not like Northern Illinois set the world on fire after that game.
No, I've been mediocre.
Yeah, anything but. That's sports. Crazy stuff happens. I'm a Stanford fan. I talked about it at the beginning of the show. Yeah, they saved my life. They saved my wife's life. I'm kind of rooting for them, but my numbers come a little bit higher. I'm rooting for them, but would I bet on them? I don't think so.
Yes, they rebounded, but it was Northern Illinois. With all due respect for them, there's no Notre Dame can ill afford another loss. If it was a loss to, if it was Texas A&M in that first game, if it was just about anybody else, because Notre Dame does have one of the better schedules, one of the stronger schedules overall. I've got to tell you that because of that game, they have less margin for error than, say, obviously Georgia with their loss to Alabama. So, but this does, this is a big number here. But yeah, there's business on it, even with the better than 3 touchdown favorite.
A lot of these high end games, which we're going to get to now, all stacked at the bottom of the rotation numbers this week. Starting in,
but not time wise.
No, not time wise. No, again, it's always check your times when you're here in Vegas with the rotation numbers. Texas, Oklahoma, Red River, Cotton Bowl, 14.5 with the Texas Longhorns, who are basically number 1 for everyone's power ratings right now. Down from 15 though. To 14.5. Total from 51 to 49.5. Quinn Ewers expected to start for UT in this game. Look, I know Oklahoma beat Auburn their last time out. This is just a lot to ask of young Hawkins Jr. in this game. Where look, Auburn, that is a hard environment, but Texas isn't going to hand you points like Auburn has done against basically every high-end opponent so far this year. If this touches 14, I'm going to be on Texas. I just wonder if this is one of those, if it hits 14, if this is one of those ones that Vinny says don't blink on, if that happens to be the case here for the Horns and Oklahoma. And by the way, this is the second most important game Texas plays in 2 weeks because they get Georgia next week in Austin.
Yeah. But this is a big recruiting game.
It's a huge game rivalry-wise.
Big rivalry, big recruiting game. Especially now it's a league game. I'm looking back to the old Southwest Conference games, and was Oklahoma in the Southwest Conference?
They were Big 8.
Yeah, they were Big 8. Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, I think this is a big game for them. I just be very hard pressed to bet Oklahoma in this game. They just seem very outclassed by a really good Texas team that's taken a little while to really be that top-notch program that really they should have been for a long time, but they really were not. But now they are. They have 2 potential. If we were in basketball, you'd call them 2 lottery picks for their quarterback situation. So I don't even think either one of them plays. It hasn't really affected the number. But I think it's a really good team against a team that's probably resting on some past laurels. And I think you might see a 14 in this game because so far we've had dog money. But I think the favorite's probably the right side here.
8-point difference from the game of the year. How's that?
It's honestly, still, if Oklahoma's
offense.
If Oklahoma had lost to Auburn, this would have come higher.
Oh, sure.
And look, I just, if we get 14, this will be a bet on the Horns for me. I just don't love the idea of going north of 2 touchdowns in a rivalry game. And Oklahoma, of course, beat Texas last year in what was just, in all honesty, a disaster by Texas all the way around to lose that game. But it was the last time they lost until the college football playoff a year ago. Boy, these games at the bottom of the rotation numbers are awesome. LSU hosts Ole Miss. This is a 7:30 Eastern game for this one down in Death Valley. LSU off a bye. Ole Miss off of that win where they, of course, beat up on South Carolina a week ago. Toggler, 3.5. We're at 3.5 right now, and I gave this out on Punchlines. You're giving me the hook with LSU. I'll very happily take it at home. Very rare that you see LSU as a home underdog against anyone other than Alabama, basically, in recent years. I'll take my chances that LSU can play this game within the field goal, and I wouldn't be shocked if they win this game outright against Ole Miss either.
I like the favorite in this one too. I think right now you look at LSU; they can score. There's no question about it.
They can,
but they can't stop anybody. I think Mississippi, their offense when they get rolling, they really didn't roll their offense last game. What they get 27, Jeff, something like that. They didn't really roll it up.
27-3.
Yeah, they have a lot of potential though to really put some numbers on the board, and I think they will against this LSU team. Now, it should be a fantastic game because you got two offenses that can score, and I think will score. Would you call this an elimination game for LSU, Jeff? Yeah. Might be close.
I think it's an elimination game for
both teams.
I don't think it. I mean, look, for Ole Miss, that loss against Kentucky at home to me is worse than losing. Even if USC ends up 9-3. I think losing on a neutral to USC is going to carry more weight for LSU in a positive light than losing at home to Kentucky. The SEC, I think, can max out at 5 teams for the college football playoff. Feel pretty confident Georgia's going to be there. Feel pretty confident Texas is going to be there. And even with last week, I still feel pretty confident Alabama is going to be there. Other than that, there's 2 spots for the rest of the league at most, maybe even 1. You go 11-1, an SEC team, you're not getting left out even if you lose in Atlanta, Vinny. Just not.
If you're 11-1, yeah, then. But I think you can start at look. There's 12 bids between the SEC and the Big 12. You could say 8 of them. Big 10, 8 of them are. What I say, Big 12, Big 10. Then 8 of them are probably going to be allocated, and then everybody else it's a free for all. So. Yeah. But this one, this game here, it's an elimination game for both of them.
LSU, by the way, has a trip to College Station left. They have Alabama left, and they have Oklahoma left. So they're scheduled pretty brutal down the stretch.
By the way, this was on the game of the year exactly the opposite. We used 3. LSU 3. Great setting, great scenes, especially
incredible.
At night.
Who you said has a trip to?
LSU's got to go to College Station, and they get Alabama.
Okay, I'm looking at Ole Miss's schedule.
Yeah, Ole Miss is the toughest game remaining.
They got Georgia.
They got Georgia in Oxford.
Yeah, they got Georgia.
Yeah.
They got Oklahoma, Florida, Mississippi State, probably the worst team in the SEC.
If Ole Miss wins tonight, they're in really good shape.
Yeah,
that loss against Kentucky. All right, let's go to the big one in the Big Ten. Oregon hosting Ohio State. Vinny, you mentioned it before the year with these Games of the Year lines where Oregon was a favorite on the Games of the Year line coming in. Now they are not.
Wait,
your Ducks 1.5, right?
We used pick. They bet on.
Oh, okay. They bet on 1.5.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So they got there eventually.
Yeah. Okay.
Ducks opened 4-point dogs in this game at most shops. Now down to 3. 54 your total in this one. And look, Chris, this is when you look at college realignment, some of the things that went right, you get this type of matchup in October as a conference game.
With all the realignment and all the, you got Texas and Georgia coming up, and we got some other games. This was the game I couldn't wait to see. And, I hate to say it, I don't really have much of an opinion on this game, but I cannot wait to see this game. This one I've been drooling since August when we realized how good both these teams were. And, well, all those years in the Big Ten, I'm most certainly not an Ohio State fan. And I had a daughter who we visited that Oregon campus. She wound up not going there. But I like Oregon. I like a lot of things they do there. And I like the state of Oregon. So I'm probably going to be rooting for Oregon unless I have a big financial concern the other way.
Great game to book. And then here's another game you book as though it's an NFL game.
Yeah.
Right? People are going to bet it that way, and we're certainly going to book it that way. Terrific game.
We'll throw this out there because this also comes into play on the last 2 games we'll talk about on before we shift over to the NFL, guys. So far in the Big Ten right now, if you include conference games only, teams that are traveling 2 time zones or more are 1-8 outright. If you go including non-con games, they're 2-10 outright. Now, the one thing is UCLA has already managed to have 4 of these games.
Yeah.
So that does skew it a little bit, and UCLA, by any metric, has been weak. But there's only been 4 covers so far in those 12 games for the teams traveling multiple.
Indiana over UCLA.
Indiana, UCLA twice actually.
Yeah.
Covering against LSU and Penn State last week. And then Jonathan Smith with the field goal at the end covered for Michigan State last week against Oregon. Yeah. So those are your only 4. And that is something to keep in mind as well with these last 2 games.
That was a little funny.
Yeah, almost like you do. Washington goes to Iowa next. By the way, I'm saving my pick for this game. I will have a play on this game tomorrow morning. Be tuned at 8 a.m. for Alex White.
Is that
and
a
I here on the
tease?
show. Iowa and Washington. This is where big noon Saturday is for Fox because NBC has Oregon and Ohio State this week. Iowa's 3. 42 to total. Washington, look, that was a great win last week against Michigan. Any way you slice it.
Yep.
And for Iowa, look, as always with the Hawkeyes, what are we getting, if anything, out of that offense for the 3-2 Hawkeyes who got pretty well crushed last week in Columbus?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I think Ohio State's going to do that to 1 or 2 teams
Yeah,
this year.
I'd say so.
I think Iowa has enough offense to cover this number against Washington, who really, what they got, bring back 1 starter, I think, from last year, if that. Just a whole different team. And I think eventually Washington will be right up there with the rest of the teams in the Big Ten. It's a great environment up there. I have a kid that lives in Seattle, and it's a great campus, a great school, great tradition, but they lost so much from last year. And I think Iowa's good enough that they can handle their business at home, and I think they will.
Went down to 2.5 and they laid it. So this one probably will be a toggler. And what do you know? They're betting an Iowa game over.
It's 2 weeks in a row now, Vinny.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Still West Coast Big Ten versus traditional. Well, Penn State's not even traditional Big Ten, even though to anyone.
It's been about 30 years.
No, I know. Even though
you
now,
still don't think of them that way.
Yeah, I think, again, for anyone my age do know it, but I've been independent for a long time. Penn State now goes on the road to USC. Chris has been all about the Trojans in this game from 5 to 3.5. Look, that was an awful loss last week for USC. Any way you slice it, you can't lose that game, and they did on the road in Minneapolis to Minnesota. It's a brutal spot for Penn State. I get it. I'm not betting this game, but I think Penn State's really good. And I don't think USC is as good as they showed earlier in the year. I think they're somewhat in between kind of what they were in the second half against Wisconsin and what they were in that whole game against Michigan, more so than anything. If the Nittany Lions are as good as I think they'll go there and win this game, but I have no confidence in them covering more than a field goal on the road here.
I like USC in this one, and it pains me to say it. I hope my daughter isn't watching. She's not. Who am I kidding? But I think that you look back at Penn State, they played their opening game at West Virginia, and West Virginia was not did not play well, certainly that day. They've come around since then. Home game. That's, that now this is a big road test. Like you said, Jeff, you're traveling across the country. A USC team is coming off a horrendous loss. And there's some things about Penn State that I've really liked. And I think that they of all teams, will benefit mostly with the expanded playoffs. But I don't like them in this spot. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give out my games here shortly. But I hate to say it, USC is going to be one of my games. I mean, I root for Penn State. It's my favorite team. But the numbers have to speak for themselves. And right now, my numbers say USC in this game. And I think it's going to be a really, really tough spot. Listen, I hope they can win this game by 3. And, whoever's on the dog will get the dough. But I think Penn State's going to have an awful lot of trouble winning this ballgame.
3 is probably where we'll see the Penn State money.
Yeah,
right? I mean, I think that's what that's what the trend is showing us from with the opener of 5 now down to 3.5. So, money showing for the over, not really surprising. So 48 up to 51. So one-way action on the side, one-way action on the total so far. This will be one of the heavier bet games of the day, no question about it. In the mid-time slot, 12:30.
All right. We'll have more games Alex and I will talk about tomorrow as well that we just don't have time for here today. Because
you're not going to have much time tomorrow either. There's some big games out there.
Yeah, no, I know Ashton Genty, as we brought up on Frank's show, is minus 6,600 to score an anytime touchdown.
Did you get my note, by the way?
Plus 475 on the other. Okay. Yeah, I would want more if I were.
I was going to say, you want a little bit of that?
I
didn't think you would.
I would want a little bit of more on that. Boise State's a big favorite in the get right or get worse game, as Vinny would say, against Hawaii. All right, we'll take a 1-minute break. Jimmy Vacarro in studio. When we get back, Sports by the Book Football Frenzy on a Friday.
South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you've still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
Well, welcome back in. It's Sports by the Book Football Frenzy. I'm Jeff Parles. Jimmy Vacarro alongside. Chris Andrews is here. Vinny Magliulo is here. My laptop's just speaking on its own. It's always a good sign. Shout out to the chat, as always. Our friend Sean Higgs in there. Lil Big, who have a question on the London game, which we'll get to in a little bit, has a question there. We have Chris Brady as well in there. Vince, as always, maybe a little familiarity there on the desk.
I know that.
And then Roger in there as well. Thank you, as always, for watching us. Now with us, of course, Jimmy's alongside. Jimmy, it's great to see you, as always.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for being here. It's really nice to feel like when you're 79 years old, and you have people who surround you in case you fall down. So you can, what's the matter? You never fell down yet?
Have I fallen down? Jimmy, everyone in their college years, unintentionally may trip over a sidewalk or two.
Yeah,
let's just go with that.
Are you done?
I'm more than done.
First of all, just a couple little side notes here to help you people along out there. Grumpy is ready for this weekend. Who's Grumpy? She's the girl who is the big shot in the back there, and she's a wonderful kid. But she said that, Jimmy, don't forget to tell them about, how hard we work. And then she said, Jimmy, don't forget to tell them that, we're always ready. And we have an early game again this weekend, right?
Yeah.
Yep, 6:30 on a Sunday morning.
And let me tell you something. It's kind of serious, but some things that I've watched over the years, and I think it's not a bad thing to keep track of what they do and how that they do it. Mm-hmm. But you got a thing here. This is going to be the biggest weekend we've had so far this year for 2 reasons. First of all, you got unbelievable. You got the Raiders and the Steelers. I mean, it just doesn't get any better. Whenever you're ready to watch that game with the $50 bill behind it. But what also that you don't see is 6 o'clock in the morning here. We have a game. So actually there are people here, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are people here.
And we're open all night, as we are always.
And then at 10 o'clock, we have the regular game that starts there. And then 1 o'clock, they have another batch. And then when you have a game like the Raiders, will be like the late. I think there'll be the late game at 5:05 tomorrow or a Sunday.
Raiders at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay, what you just keep leading into another batch that people are playing into. So part of the reason that everybody loves this sport because it never, ever, ever slows down. So you could actually come out and tell the wife to stay home. You're going to watch the England game. You'll be home 12 o'clock that night. So when you do those things, you're doing the right thing. And Chris is always he's always working that hard back there. And you know what, my friend? I'm jokingly, but it's the truth. Constantly with what you do is keep maneuvering constant over and over and over again. So when everybody's there and has a ticket, and then when they lose that bet, they get up and they start screaming. If they win the game, they point to the ceiling like everything is okay. But like I said, I love the games. I love the intensity. And where were you, Chris, the day that the Franco Harris caught the football?
I can tell you exactly where I was. When Kenny Stabler ran in from the 30, with the longest run he's ever had against a great Steeler defense, My cousin Zach and I got in the car. We were driving to Churchill High School. We said, this game's over. It's ridiculous. So I was just about pulling into the parking lot at Churchill High School to go play some pickup basketball when we're listening to, was it Bill Fleming or Jack Fleming? I can't remember. It's caught out of the air. Franco, we're like looking at each other. What the hell happened? What happened? And, of course, now all these years later, we know what happened.
You know what people forget is the game was blacked out in the
It was blacked out in
area.
Pittsburgh.
Because
Why wouldn't it be?
Why? Because they're stupid. They did not sell enough tickets for the game?
No, it didn't matter if you sold tickets. They didn't, it was I tell people this, guys like your age, what are you, 30 now?
31, yeah.
Okay. I tell guys like, Jimmy tells a story all the time. On Saturday, we got one college football game.
Yep.
One.
Yeah.
And in the NFL, they had these crazy rules. It had not, later had something to do with the sellouts. But before that, no, the game was not going to be on in Pittsburgh.
And
I guess they were helping all the scalpers or something. I don't know.
As a youngster, I remember when it was blacked out, what do? What you do, you get in your car and you drive around for 3.5 hours like I did.
Or a couple times we drove to Youngstown to get it on that feed.
I went past Butler, which is a pretty good right away. So anyway, you're looking, and the other thing with Big Jimmy, who was just a big monster bettor, I bet 300 on the loser. I was the only guy in Trafford who had the Raiders. Yeah, had the Raiders. So whatever. But you know what? This whole thing makes a lot of sense, and I'll let you run with it now because you see, everything that you do, we try to copy.
I do want to ask you about this though.
There's some copy.
Yeah, get that one, Jimmy.
Get this guy right here that Jimmy has in his hand.
You know what we did with Michael Gaughn is like simply always trying to like throw a little extra in there for the customer. Now this is a good overlay. We'll end up giving away probably about say Chris, 35,000, 40,000.
I think that's a pretty good guess.
Bet. Yeah. And it's a good way to spend the day. Yes, we understand it's really hard to win at it, but the bottom line is it's an overlay. You're getting obviously a good price for your figure. What was it, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago? One person hit it.
Yeah,
$34,000.
Right?
Yeah, the one guy who had the Patriots over Cincinnati.
Yeah, wow.
So this card is going the last Saturday of the college football regular season. So the last Saturday.
We're calling it the college rivalry jackpot card. All games on Saturday.
November 30.
So that's the last day of the college football regular season. Of course, Ohio State, Michigan is on there. The Battle of the Bluegrass, Kentucky and Louisville's on there, Vinny.
Yep.
You have Farmageddon in Iowa State. I always love any excuse to say Farmageddon. Iowa State, Kansas State, but plenty of great matchups going that last
Notre
week.
Dame, USC, Maryland, Penn State, which Penn State guys know that's a big rivalry for them. Big recruiting game.
With all that time between now and then, we might hit $50,000.
I hope we do. I really, and it's funny how how things work around here. Both of you guys know that. I started looking at this and I was thinking about it. So I called Michael Gaughn. I said, I've got to talk to you about something. Yeah, what do you got? I started telling it was like about 3 seconds into the conversation. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. I said, okay.
It's Thanksgiving weekend, by the way.
It's Thanksgiving weekend. So Thursday and Friday, we're going to have tons of business, tons of out-of-towners. And then this game, we mentioned a couple games. We can just get, Nevada, UNLV, Alabama, Auburn, Notre Dame, USC, Texas A&M, Arizona State, Washington, Oregon. This is
Iron Bowl Iron Bowl as well.
South Carolina and Clemson, which is a big rivalry down there. Yeah. There's all rivalry games, and I tell you the truth, it's one of my favorite days of the year. Is that Saturday?
Now, aren't there 3 NFL games on the Thanksgiving usually?
3 on Thanksgiving,
3 and 1 on Black Friday.
One on Friday. Yeah. So you know what kind of action we're going to have this weekend? And I know the last couple of years, my wife went up to Montana to have Thanksgiving with our kids, and this year the kids are coming down here. Okay. And I told them, I'm not going to see you much. I'll be there for dinner, but I'm not going to see you much on Friday and Saturday.
There's one of these things that just seems to haunt the bookmakers since the beginning of time. The favorites on New Year's Day, we always try to win one
Thanksgiving.
of them. Thanksgiving Day. It's just like,
dog.
I've had, again, I'm going back, and obviously you two can tell me also what the numbers were. I think the last year I was at the Mirage. I think I lost like 180,000 on the 3 games with Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah.
They just come in for some reason. Maybe because they're eating turkey or something. Who knows?
I would make when we only had 2 games, I'd make the joke. I said, I'm rooting against Dallas and for Detroit. I mean, I know, and under. That's what I'm going to be needing.
And then there was the Texas and Texas A&M game, right?
Wow.
That was the night game.
Yeah. NFL Thanksgiving, Lions, Bears, Giants, Cowboys.
Wow.
Packers hosting the Dolphins.
Right?
So that's the night game?
Which, boy, did that game lose some luster.
I was going to say, I'll be rooting for some dogs that day, too.
You're going to be rooting for the Giants, Miami, and Chicago, my friend, that day.
Give me a 3-teamer, Jeff. You want to book that one?
Well, the bottom line is we'll be rooting for somebody, that's for sure. And I sometimes I just keep going overboard with this stuff, but I can't believe it because I just keep walking around before the game starting, and these people are juiced. They are really, really juiced. So, I know for whatever reason the joint is run properly. There's no negative outcomes that scream at me, but so I enjoy working for Michael Gaughn, which he hired me 50 years ago in January.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time, kid.
You hired me in 80.
Yeah, it is.
What's that, 44 years? Yeah.
78.
75.
1978.
78 for Vinny.
Somewhere around 78 or whatever. All I know is this January means Sonny dropped me off at the airport 50 years ago,
That's
January
amazing.
4th.
Wow. That's incredible.
It is incredible. Yeah. So listen, take notice of the older guys that are around you. Don't try to take all the time so we don't have any.
Oh, they look.
Give us a break. I'm trying to hang on.
Jimmy, all I'll tell you is, and this is not lost on me, that I get to do this show every Friday with you three. I mean, it is
you're doing a good job,
it is a pleasure and an honor every week to talk with you.
So here, tell them again I'm leaving.
Okay.
You got 2 microphones.
I got 2 microphones. They got to Jerry, make sure I don't come in double. Jimmy, thank you as always, everyone.
Did you win the Raider game up in Churchill, you and Zach?
Yeah. Yeah, I had the Steelers. I had to make sure I didn't run out of money.
I'm saying you had one bean on the game.
Nah, that was a young kid. I think I had $20 or something. Yeah.
Wow.
You and Zach were having a race to get
Jimmy Vaccaro, everyone. American treasure himself, as always.
I had to go out on Long Island and collect.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
I had to go see Kenny and Mike at the Sandy Creek Inn in Verona.
Great.
Let's go to this week in the NFL. 4 teams on bye. Very important win for the Niners last night.
Big.
To get to 500.
Yeah. Well, look, they're if Arizona loses this weekend, they're in first place. Arizona.
Can I say, Brock Purdy, and I mean, we all know he's the last guy drafted and all that. He's more athletic than you want to think, because he can run pretty good when he has to. But man, this kid is so accurate. He puts the ball on the money.
I thought he played great last night.
I did too.
I thought he played great last night. But look, Gino made 2 just hellaciously bad throws.
I know.
Including when that game was, when Seattle got that game to 6, it's like, oh my goodness, is San Francisco going to do this again in a divisional game?
I know. We needed that. Yeah. We needed the dog.
I'm not surprised by that.
No.
Not one bit. Let's go to London. By the way, a little big in the chat had the question of how much does travel account for this London game, because Jacksonville went late. Chicago went early in this game. Bears and Jaguars is your London game. It's down to 1. Chicago is the home team in this game. Jacksonville will play back-to-back weeks in London.
That's why they went later, too.
I know it. This is the road game. The home game's next week against New England. Mm-hmm. This game is at the same place the Jets and the Vikings play, Tottenham Hotspur. Mm-hmm. Next week is at Wembley, which is, of course, the National Stadium in London.
Where Greece beat England the other day.
Yeah, how about that?
First time ever.
How about that? With a 2-1 win yesterday.
Wembley.
In Wembley for the Greeks.
Shocker.
Amazing win.
Amazing win. I was loving every minute.
Bookmakers cleaned up.
I'm sure. When you get those weird, wonky results in the Nations League over there in Europe.
That was great.
1 now in 44.5. Bears have looked much better the last 2 weeks, but the question, as always, is how much of that had to do with the opponent for Chicago beating the Rams and the Panthers back-to-back?
I made the game pick 'em. I don't have any strong opinion. I kind of like this 6:30 game, mostly because I got a very good crew. I don't have to be here. In the old days, I did have to be here. But this will be fun. I'll be having my morning coffee and kind of going over some numbers while this game is on. So it should be a little bit of fun. But I like these games myself. There's other times maybe I don't like it so much, but this game I made pick. I think we're going to have really good two-way action on it, and looking forward to it, but no opinion whatsoever.
It's a great question about the travel because, we've seen teams go late and be impacted by it negatively. But I think, the fact of the matter is the Jags go there every year. This is part of their –
They know what they're doing
They
with this.
know the routine. Yeah. And because of the fact that they go – now the last couple of years, right, and this year is no different, they play for 2 games, 2 consecutive games, so they just stay. And they understand that the rhythm of that, not really impactful to this number. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's a neutral site game. It is listed as a home game in this case for the Bears, and next week it'll be for the Jags. But the money's come in so far. I mean, you could say it's been somewhat to it, but there's more money on the Jags here because, again, I think of that familiarity, and but. Look, I think the Bears have looked better too. You hit it on a key point too, based on opponents. I mean, their defense is good. It's their offense that still needs to find a rhythm. And frankly, for the Jags, they need to find a rhythm on both sides of the ball.
Yes,
they do.
Look, for Jacksonville, that was a ginormous win last week. If the way that went down, if they had blown a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter and lost, this would not be Doug Peterson coaching this game.
Well.
I feel pretty confident.
We could have taken a defensive coordinator with him.
Look, it was
2 touchdowns in 70 seconds?
Not even. I don't think. But credit to Jacksonville, at least coming down the field, making the field goal at the end, and then holding on and landed at 3, which I know was a great result for you guys.
You had to bring it up, right? Okay.
I still haven't given up hope on Jacksonville.
They're bad. That AFC is a mess right now.
The AFC's a mess. I mean, Houston certainly looks like the class of that division, but that wild card spot is wide open. I mean, I don't know. I think that Peterson's been to a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl. And, Lawrence just, hasn't quite gotten there yet, but we still see signs of it. Is he going to get there? I have a feeling he's never going to get there quite what we expected him to, but I still think he's good enough where he could sneak this team in the playoffs.
Let's go to the next game on the card, and this is an unexpected doozy, potentially, where I don't think anyone circled Washington and Baltimore as a high-end football game. But, look, the line doesn't even technically say that, but this game would have been double digits if Washington had come out in the fashion that we would have expected. And here they are. The Commanders have won 4 in a row. They've had the best offense in football through 5 weeks. And now they get it's a Beltway battle here. There's the easy travel here for this game. 6.5 on Baltimore, 51.5 to total. The line hasn't moved all week since you opened it on Sunday, Chris. And you know what? I do lean the favorite in this game because if you look at what Baltimore has done against NFC competition the last few years, they have just smacked around the NFC, especially in Baltimore. We saw, again, they only beat Dallas by 3, but that was 28-3 before Baltimore stopped playing in that game. Last year, 2 home games against the NFC against potential playoff teams. They beat Seattle by 4 scores. They beat Detroit by 4 scores. This kind of feels like a welcome to the NFL moment for Jaden Daniels. I do like the favored Ravens, even with that zany overtime victory a week ago against Cincinnati.
Well, I made it number 6, so I have no real opinion. But I get the Washington Post, one of the publications I get, and I've been reading some of the stories, and I mean, Washington really wants to make this a rivalry. Now, they won't see Baltimore again for 4 years, I guess.
They could see. It all depends on how that new structure with the schedule. They could see them as soon as next year if they both win the division.
This year's results.
They could see them next year technically.
So they know there's a chance that if they win this game, it kind of puts them on the map, especially locally. The 2 cities, if you've ever been there, just
very, very easy,
like an hour apart. I don't have an opinion in this game. I spent so many years rooting against both these teams because I hate the Ravens because they're in the same division as Steelers, and I've always hated Washington because they were Daniel Snyder's team. But now, no real reason to hate what are they? The Commanders. No real reason to hate them now. But I'd kind of like to see this become a rivalry. So unless I have a great financial decision one way or the other. I'm going to root for the Commanders because I'd love to see this down the road just become a big rivalry game.
And not a lot of movement on the total either. I mean, it ticked up a bit. By the way, this is the highest total on the board.
Yeah.
I mean, it got as high as 52.5, but then it came down to the opener here, 51.5. Selfishly, I wish this was a later game because I think everybody's going to get involved with it. And certainly a big teaser game, too. I mean, again, teasers have become more and more popular in the last decade especially. And so this game will draw a lot of teaser action as well, along with the straight bets and the parlays.
Be a fun game.
Yeah.
It'll be a fun game. And for Baltimore, Derrick Henry looks young. And if that's the case, that is a frightening proposition for the AFC. Baltimore, who, again, 0-2, staring 0-3 in the face, is not lost since then. They've beaten, I know Cincinnati's not the same. I know Dallas isn't the same. They still beat 3 projected playoff teams going into the year back to back to back after that 0-2 start and that befuddling loss to the Raiders in week 2. All right, let's go to Lambeau next. Green Bay hosting Arizona. The Packers, 5-point favorites in this game. Total 47.5. The total's been a bigger mover in this game, 50 to 47.5, so underplay. Packers have moved up a half a point. I mean, there's really not much of a difference between 4.5 and 5. It just doesn't land on 5 very often in the NFL. Look, for Arizona, I mean, upset San Francisco on the road last week in a game that you look up at halftime, it's like, oh, the Niners are in complete control. It's 23-10. And then you check in about an hour later. It's like, oh, Arizona's driving to take the lead with less than 5 minutes to go. With that said, I gave this out on Frank's show. I like the favorite in this
You like
game.
the favorite?
I do. I just that was an important win for Green Bay last week. A conference game, sure, but even just for the psyche of that football team and Jordan Love, if they went 0-3 in the games Love started versus the 2-0 without him, I just wonder for a young quarterback who just got paid all this money, I wonder if it just spirals out of control for him. But with getting that win, all right, we know he's good. I know I'm good if I'm Jordan Love. We finally won with him as a starting quarterback. I like the Packers going a little bit of a run here as well with the soft schedule the next few weeks. So I do like Green Bay laying 5 at home against Arizona.
My numbers, you can see my chart, comes to 4.5.
Right
on the opener anyway, and it's a little bit. So obviously, I do not have an opinion in the game, but I do want to say a couple things. Number one, do we have Arizona underrated? And I think I might.
We might.
I might.
Your defense still has a lot of question marks.
Absolutely. No question. And I'm not a Kyler Murray fan. Everybody knows that from the time this kid got out of college. But I think, listen, he's coming around a little bit. He's putting some points on the board. The other thing I would say, I think Love tends to put the ball in harm's way more than he should. Doesn't always correlate to putting the team in harm's way, but it definitely puts the ball in harm's way, I think. So no opinion on this game, but I think this will be a good one to watch.
This game here is, I think it continues to go in the Packers' direction. Chrissy's right. I mean, the Cardinals, because they can score, their defense, they give up a lot of points, but they still put points on the board, and they never stop attacking. I mean, probably because they have to. So, but that said, we typically need them week in and week out, and I think it's going to be another game where we're going to this number will, in my opinion, will continue to go up. Public is going to bet the Packers in this one for sure.
Going to New England next, fellas. Drake May makes the first start of his NFL career, and it comes against the team with the highest sack rate in the NFL on their defense. With that said, though, this is a brutal injury deal for Houston coming into this game. They lose Nico Collins to the hamstring injury. He's on IR designated to return. Joe Mixon did practice yesterday, so that could be a important deal with losing their high-end wide receiver, replacing him with With Mixon, who's been out since week 2, he's expected to play with that high ankle sprain. With that said, Patriots have been bet here, 7 to 7.5, total 38 on this one with young Mr. Drake May making his NFL starting debut.
Are we at 7.5?
No, 6.5.
Did I say 7.5?
Yeah, we're at
6.5.
6.5.
6.5. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was going to say.
I'm looking at it
I've been
right
gone
there.
for an hour and a half, so you never know.
Sorry
I mean,
about that.
okay.
6.5.
Might
Yeah.
have to step out of it. Is there a 7.5?
No, there is no 7.5 anymore.
okay.
I thought we were going to get there at one point,
well,
but
I did
we're
too.
not.
Yeah, so we're at 6.5 right now. Even with the injuries, I made this number higher. I thought we'd get the 7.5, maybe even 8 in this game. But I always say once you breach the wall at 7 and head to 7.5, look out. It could be going up to 9, 9.5. You never know. But it's going the other way. I'm a little bit surprised. I'm not sure it's the greatest spot in the world to debut your first round rookie quarterback, Drake May. But they did, and the money showed on him. I'm not sure about this one. Gun to my head, I'd probably bet on Houston. But there's a lot of there's too many what ifs in this game for me to make a strong opinion. But I do kind of like the favorite.
Sometimes you have to wonder. What these decisions are. This is a difficult spot to put this kid in.
Yeah.
But sure, everything falls on the head coach, which that's part of the job, right? I'm not so sure this is a decision by the head coach.
That's his decision.
It is his decision. He's carrying the company.
You might be right. Absolutely.
I mean, at some point, the owner and the general manager are going to say, listen, here's what we got going. Here's where we're at. Here's what's happening. We got a journeyman. Okay, Jacoby Brissett, serviceable. We have to find out what we really have here. Because at some point, they're going to have to, now, and that's the world we live in, right? This is an immediate society we live in. And these rookies are being asked to do it right away. Now you have an organization here that's drafted a couple of quarterbacks since Brady's gone, and they haven't worked out yet. Yeah. So they want to know if he's going to be the answer. So there's some of that at play here. Again, credit the coach. Yeah, it's my responsibility. Okay, great. But at some point, you have to wonder, wait a second, you really think this is the game? I mean, I'm not so sure.
That's what I'm most concerned about, because New England's offensive line is awful.
Yeah.
Just awful. Now, the argument is there's really not a good landing spot in the next few weeks.
What is a good landing spot? I'm not sure.
You really want to
next year?
Do you want to make his debut? If you want him to play at all this year, you really want him to make his debut in London? Do you really want him to go against the Jet defense in 2 weeks?
He's going against this defense.
Well, that's my point. I like. Do you want him going against? To me, I always thought that November 3rd against Tennessee was the time that we were going to see him. But look, this team's not winning. It doesn't matter. They're not winning games. Whoever's playing quarterback for them this year.
Listen,
this team's super far off from being competitive in this league.
I'm not purporting to be, a head coach or a GM. I'm just saying it's curious, right? And I think that's
Vinny,
entering,
100%
and I think that's entering into the way this game is going to be bet, because I think it's more likely to go up than come down. And I can tell you this. We talked about teasers earlier. The Texans are going to be in every teaser.
Oh, well, look, they are off 7, which is key, because being a 7-point favorite this year in the NFL has been more dangerous than having a 3-goal lead in hockey.
I can tell you that it's more likely to see 7, in my opinion, than 6.
Let's go to New Orleans next. Saints hosting the Buccaneers. No Derek Carr. Yeah. And rookie Spencer Rattler will get the nod over Jay Kaner.
How come he didn't play last week?
He was the third quarterback on depth.
Why? So you go from third to starter?
You know what?
Taysom Hill is out. Yeah. Or he's hurt.
Well, Taysom Hill's not even a quarterback anymore. No. Hill's not listed. He's the tight end. Look, for me on this with Rattler, with Rattler, high potential guy going into Oklahoma, was the number 1 recruit in the country, and flamed out at Oklahoma. Actually played pretty well at South Carolina his last 2 years.
Not bad, yeah.
Really good in the preseason, and as we know, the preseason tells us nothing about these guys for the most part. This is an interesting spot for Tampa, because last week, so by the way, also mini bye versus short rest for the second consecutive week in the NFL, by the way. Giants last week had a mini bye, went to Seattle and won. as an underdog against Seattle, who was on short rest because they played Monday night the week before. Same deal here. I don't know why the NFL has done this back-to-back weeks, but that's a different argument for a different time. Obviously, Tampa has been out of the city of Tampa for a week now because of the destruction that came through with Hurricane Milton. This is a divisional game. Tampa's coming off a soul-crushing loss against Atlanta in a game they controlled most of the way and then found a way to lose late. From 2.5 to it's funny that it's only been a 1-point move on the quarterback, which kind of tells you more about Derek Carr more so than anything.
No,
right?
no, it was 2.5 the other way.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
the Saints
open.
wrong. The Saints on Monday open.
Okay, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
It's about a 6-point.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, wait a second, only one. 6-point flip. I can't get there to lay it with Tampa, even though again I just can't. If it was 3, I'd consider it, but at 3.5, I just can't get there.
That's what would make you think on this.
Oh, that you're doing a good job, Chris.
Well, with my numbers, considering the Carr injury, my numbers came to 3.5. Tampa
right
Bay.
on it.
So I mean, I'm right on it. 3.5 on the road, but that the buy, the mini buy kind of thing. I don't know. That the quarterback change is just really makes a big difference. Who did Tampa play last week?
Atlanta.
Where was it at?
In Atlanta.
In Atlanta. I don't know. Like I said, I made it 3.5. No opinion. I hope it's a well bet game because right now there's been a little bit of money on Tampa Bay, but I think if you get to a certain point, that is a tough place to play down in New Orleans. And I'm trying to see I have one of my highest home field advantages. So even with that, I think if it does get any higher, you may see some money come back on the dog.
I brought up Taysom Hill because at least he gives them some options outside, on some plays. And I know they don't even think of it. Who could he be more of a factor if he was healthy, right? Would he see more downs? I don't know. They haven't done that, but it's just thinking out loud.
It's also not Sean Payton coaching the team anymore.
It's a dynamic that they're missing.
3.5 on Tampa on the road at New Orleans, 41.5 for the total on this one. All right, let's go to Philly next. Eagles off the bye, and this is more to do with Cleveland more so than anything. I mean, the Browns have just been an abomination so far this year. I know that really upsets you there, Chris. 9, Eagles getting healthier. Devontae Smith off the concussion protocol. He is in. A.J. Brown trending in the right direction as well. And Lane Johnson is off the injury report. So 3 of the Eagles' 5 best players all expected to play after none of them played against Tampa before the bye, and obviously that game was a disaster for the Eagles. The Browns have been awful. Deshaun Watson's been the best quarterback to go against this year, the worst quarterback in the NFL who's started 5 games so far this year by basically every metric. And the question is, more than anything, when does Kevin Stefanski get the go-ahead from ownership to actually pull the plug on this? Because that's the only explanation that makes any sense on why Watson is still in.
100%. I mean, we talk about ownership getting involved here, and at some point in time, Stefanski is going to get the brunt of this. He's going to wind up getting fired, and he'll be out of a job for about 15 minutes. Although I said the same thing about Vrabel in New England or with Tennessee, but I don't know. I think right now, Watson. And we don't have a whole lot of time. At some point, I want to talk about the illusion of parity in the NFL because it's really an illusion. There are certain teams that are just awful for years. And Cleveland is going to be awful. Not only has been awful, they're going to be awful for a long time because of the burden of this salary and its horrible trade that they made. And I made this number a little higher. Now, at some point, I was famous for saying diminishing returns for a lot of high favorites. But I'm not so sure this is a diminishing returns type of game. You mentioned 3 players coming back for Philly. Cleveland, their defense is pretty good, but it's not nearly enough to overcome what Watson does to them. So I like Philly in this game. Laying a lot of wood. And you're talking about teaser games. This is going to be a big teaser game right here.
Yeah.
So we're probably going to need Cleveland outright, and I don't like our chances.
Going to need the Browns, no question. The subplot here is you have 2 teams where I think it's pretty clear that coach and quarterback are not in sync. I mean, I don't think things are. I think it's worse in Cleveland, but I'm not so sure about the chemistry in Philly either.
For Philly, it just, again, Sirianni is what he is at this point. He's a glorified cheerleader more so than anything than a football coach. And I'm with you 100%, Vinny. And Jalen Hurts, this was always the worry with me with Jalen Hurts. I was worried he peaked in that Super Bowl loss against Kansas City because he went punch for punch with Patrick Mahomes in that game, and it just wasn't enough in the end. Right. And since then, other than a few very high-end games last year, especially that game in Buffalo in the rain, before the wheels came off the Eagles season a year ago, he's regressed. But I think Chris, I'm happy you brought up diminishing returns. That's been missing from the bingo card the last few years.
Yeah, it has, yeah.
But
we haven't had that many point spread games, big point spreads.
I'm with you on this, where this just feels like Cleveland is a dead football team until Deshaun Watson is taken out. And I don't know if that's coming anytime soon because I don't think Jimmy Haslam is going to let Kevin Stefanski bench him because of how much money Deshaun Watson is guaranteed. And you know what? We're seeing it with other franchises with bad ownership. Cleveland is one of the poster child since coming back into the league for bad ownership, regardless of who's owned the team. It just happens. No coincidence the Jets have the longest postseason drought in professional sports right now. It's no coincidence that the Carolina Panthers are an abject mess. It's no coincidence that the Cleveland Browns are a laughing stock historically, especially since coming back into the league in the late 90s.
And conversely, there's other teams. Listen, I knocked Jerry Jones, but his team's going to win about 10 games almost every year. The Philadelphia Eagles, ever since
Laurie bought the team.
We had a long run where New England was great. Some other things happened. Pittsburgh has been a contender almost every year.
Look at recent times for Kansas City. Now that
until Dan Campbell showed up in Detroit. Yeah. They were one of the worst franchises, and they probably found the right guy.
Right.
So
GM,
you can turn some things around. Yeah. But overall, like I said, you look at like a 20-year period, parity does not exist. Year to year it does, but over the course of time, it does not.
Coaching matters.
Of course.
And coaching matters most when it's in or out of sync with ownership.
Let's go to Nashville next. Titans host the Colts. Titans off the bye will go back to Will Levis, who I don't think it was a coincidence that their one win was the game where Levis barely played. He is going to start for Indy. No Jonathan Taylor, but everyone else seems good to go. Richardson on track to play. Michael Pittman on track to play. So you can take the Richardson news however you want. You can look at that as a negative or a positive, and I can't really blame you either way at this point. 3 now on this game. You guys are market high here. Best number in the world on Indianapolis if you want the Colts at a 3 flat, Chris.
Kind of like the Colts in this game. Levis is the starter. Maybe Frankie can put some more mayonnaise in his coffee or he just is a turnover machine at this point in time. And, the Colts do have a lot of things going against them. But I think this game at 3. But, we got bet here, Jeff. I didn't just go to 3 for the hell of it.
It's been recent action, too.
Yeah, a lot today. So, we're at 3 for a reason. I hope somebody eventually takes it. But if they want to lay the 3, I got to tell you, that's even better. And that's another thing with bookmakers. A lot of times you think, boy, I hope they take us and even this out. Other times you think, let them lay that worst number. That what really plays into our hands. So I don't know. I like the Colts in this game. I think this number has been gone the wrong way since we opened it. What did we open? We opened the Colts 1.
Colts won Monday.
We're up to 3 the other side. I don't agree with that move at all.
Vinny, technically Richardson game time decision, but is trending the correct way. Is practice every day this week.
Well, I've got to tell you, there's nothing wrong with Flacco.
No.
For the last couple of years. Now, the thing here is, if with Levis coming back, this is not a particularly stellar defense in Indy, right? This is one of the
arguably the worst in the NFL.
One of the worst defenses in the league. So, but they can score, and the Titans really don't. So, it's it's going to be an interesting game to see how it plays out. And if it is going to be Richardson, these two quarters, another organization here, I think in Tennessee, that's saying, all right, here we made this decision. Now let's see where it takes us. I don't know if it's going to take them very far.
Let's go to the AFC West. Chargers on the road at Denver to take on the Broncos, who have won 3 in a row somehow.
Yes.
At 3-2. Chargers off the bye. Justin Herbert is off the injury report. So good news there for the Chargers, who, again, look, they really got hit with a bad injury bug before their bye. And normally I would say having the early bye does not help you long term. But for the Chargers, very much helped them. They needed it because they're out without Rashawn Slater, who's now questionable for this game. They were without Joey Bosa last game. He's questionable. Joe Alt is fully back. It's 3 Chargers on the road in Denver against, again, a surprising Bronco team who's rattled off 3 games in a row. 2 of them on the road against projected playoff teams coming into the year.
I think this number is way too high as far as the Chargers are concerned. And, I don't like playing momentum necessarily in the NFL. As a matter of fact, I recommend playing against it. But, you can't ignore what has happened to this Denver team. I think their defense is playing really well. Bo Nix, we still got a long way to go here. And I seen him arguing with Peyton on the sidelines. And, I'm not sure exactly what that means, to tell you the truth. But they did win 3 in a row. And it's not just they picked up some fluky turnovers and stuff like that. The defense has really come around and played well. And the Chargers, I think Herbert is a great, great player. And I think Harbaugh has been a terrific coach and will continue to be a terrific coach. But laying 3 on the road in Denver, I don't see that. I'd like the other side here. I like Denver quite a bit.
I think if you're looking at Denver, you may want to sprinkle some money line as well.
I agree with you, Vinny.
Because if you like them to cover this game, the way they've been playing, particularly at home. This is I tell you right now, I think this comes out. I think we're going to wind up needing we're going to need the Chargers in this game because I think there'll be plenty of money line action on the Broncos.
It's conflicting. This is what I'm about to say is completely conflicting, but it's either the Chargers cover or Denver wins outright. It's kind of the way I feel. I know it's completely conflicting, but I feel like if the Chargers are going to win this game, they're going to win this game by 2 scores. And if the Broncos are going to cover that number, I'm with you, Vinny. I'd rather just have the bite of the apple on the money line, take the plus 130 and go for there. And you know what? If Denver loses by 2 or 1, then you know what? I'm a sucker then. And that's all you can really go with on that one. All right, let's go to the game in town here. Steelers-Raiders. 3 on the road for the Steelers. 36.5 the total. And this is the best game of the year for one reason and one reason only. I can't remember an NFL game that hasn't moved side or total the whole week, Chris. And you guys have not moved it at all the whole week.
Has not moved.
That's incredible.
I didn't realize that, but wow. I think this game, I kind of like the Steelers in this game.
No.
Well, I bet against Penn State.
So Aiden O'Connell will make his first start of the year for the Raiders here.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson will be active, but is expected to be the number 2 quarterback in this game for Pittsburgh.
I always have so many questions about the Steelers, particularly their offense. But meanwhile, last game, they let a Dallas team who didn't look sharp at all during the game march 75 yards and win on a 4th down pass play. I mean, that's, pretty inexcusable. I'm sorry. So I do have a lot of questions about this Steeler team, but you got to have more questions about the Raiders, don't you? I mean, right now, this is a team that I don't want to say they're in disarray. They've been in disarray for the last 2 years, though, and it looks like, standard procedure for that team. But it's a big game. It's hard to go on the road and win and certainly cover by more than 3. But I do kind of like the Steelers in this spot. I think they take care of business here. I hope they run the ball well, and I hope they give Fields some opportunities to connect on some passes. And I think that will. I think that will happen. So I do like the Steelers. Not an official play of mine, but I'd lean that way.
It's going to be one of the heavier bet games of the day. I think everybody's going to have an interest in this game. When I say a betting interest on this game, especially that it's here. Obviously, the in game will be tremendous on this one as well. But yeah, holding steady at 3 and 36.5. There'll be plenty of Steeler fans.
Yeah. What makes you say that?
Because every week, as we know, the visitors are very well represented. It's a business. Listen, it's a business move by ticket holders.
Of course, I think it's 75-25 Steeler fan.
It could very well be. Yeah,
more so than anything. I thought I lost my sneeze, Jerry. Right there. That's a callback to punchlines earlier.
Yeah, that's a song.
It's very funny. All right, Falcons, Panthers, next game up. Carolina, you know what? It kind of looks like it was a 1-week mirage for Andy Dalton and company, fellas. Mm-hmm. Since battering the Raiders.
Well, they were in the desert, so may as well have a mirage.
Yeah, might as well. Since battering the Raiders, outscored 70-34 in 2 games by Cincinnati and Chicago. Now they get Atlanta, who's off of a mini bye playing Thursday last week. Look, the Falcons, again, the talent's not the question. It's just the stuff between the ears for that franchise, as it always has been. But I will say this. Don't love laying 6 in a division game, Chris. I can tell you that, especially on the road in Charlotte, even against the NFL's worst.
I made the number 6.
Okay.
Boy, I don't know. This is a tough one.
Sure is.
You know, and I got to say this. I'm surprised that the Steeler game was the only game that didn't move, because this is one of those games. I look at it sometimes. Does anybody even know that they're playing? Because I have very little action on this game. So I'm going to pass it along to my friend here from Brooklyn. I got no opinion.
I will put it to you this way. There'll be more action on the Ohio State-Oregon game than this game.
I hope so.
Oh, I would hope so, too. Might be a bunch of college games with more action when it's all said and done for Carolina and Atlanta. All right, I know this game will have action. The Lions go to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Detroit off the bye. Cowboys, of course, look, they won the game on Sunday night. I'm not sure how they managed to win that game in Pittsburgh, but they did. Dak Prescott's touchdown pass to Tolbert with less than 30 seconds to go gets the win for Dallas. Togler, 3.5, with Detroit favored on the road in Dallas. Again, of course, we saw this matchup last year late in the regular season. That was the Dan Skipper game where the refs completely screwed Detroit in that one. The 2-point conversion where they claimed Skipper didn't report. He did report, and the Lions end up losing by 1 because of it. Highest total on the board as well of the week at 52.5 on this game.
You know, my numbers, pure numbers, come to the Lions 2.5.
Okay.
But you look at the situation. Okay. The revenge from last year. And don't think Dan Campbell has forgotten that game.
He has not.
He went ballistic in that game, and rightfully so. And I'm sure he's been talking about it all week to his team. Also, Dallas, very weak against the run, which I'm surprised Pittsburgh didn't run the ball better against them last week. But I think Detroit absolutely will run the ball much, much better. So even though my numbers came a little lighter, I wouldn't be anxious to lay the 3.5, but I do think 3.5 is a much better number. You know, one of those, I like your number better. We haven't had that on the bingo card for a while.
We had that last week.
We had that last week? Yeah. Okay. Well, I like your number better at the 3.5. That's the general public I'm speaking to. Because I think 3 is just too cheap. 2.5, way too cheap. Detroit, I think, is going to be tough to beat in this game. But I wouldn't go crazy betting against Dallas, in Dallas. In a game like this. But I think Detroit, anything under a 3 would most certainly be a lay.
You know, I talked about the last game, and Chrissy mentioned how, not as much action. This game, everybody will be involved with.
Oh, yeah.
No question about it. And right now, laying the 3 and taking 3.5. And Lions with 2 weeks to prepare. And Dallas still beat up, particularly on defense. And this is a 2-headed rushing monster. In Detroit, so this one here is this will continue to go back and forth. There'll be carryover too. That's going to impact what the number is, right?
This is
afternoon game.
This is a monster handle game for you guys, of course. And look, I'm with you, Chris. I thought this should have been north of 3. I know there's some that are arguing. Wait a second, how is Baltimore a pick in Dallas and now Detroit's 3? And I understand that angle too, but. this Dallas team, especially with no Parsons again, they were very fortunate to get out of Pittsburgh with a win, and I think it had to do with the Steelers. The Steelers' defense choked in that game, for lack of a better phrase. They really did.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And for Detroit's defense, which look has its problems, there's no arguing that. Forced 2 turnovers. They're going to cash in and score touchdowns. They're not going to kick field goals off those turnovers.
But the Steelers are going to need to start scoring more points.
I did no argument from that. But that's.
And I would tell you this about Detroit: Jared Goff has to start playing a little bit better.
He was great last week.
He was great last week. Can he do that consistently? Because we've been saying that during his whole career. There's good Jared Goff and there's not so good Jared Goff. If he plays like last week, though, Dallas could be in a lot of trouble.
If he doesn't throw an incomplete pass, Detroit's winning this game by more than 3. I feel pretty confident.
Yeah, what was he, 18 for
18? And caught a touchdown pass in that game against Seattle 2 weeks ago. All right, now we get the MetLife double. Both of these games in prime time. What a weekend for New York area sports teams. I mean, my goodness, both the Mets and the Yankees in the league championship series starting this weekend. And now the Jets and the Giants, both underdogs at home this weekend. We'll start with Big Blue, who's coming off, quite frankly, a shocking victory last week in Seattle. And you know what? Should have won by more because of that ridiculous fumble play at the beginning of the game that handed Seattle 7 points. 29-20 Giants win as a big underdog in Seattle a week ago. Now to get the Bengals where, look, if you told me that Joe Burrow would statistically be a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, I would have said the Bengals are 4-1 or 5-0. And instead they're 1-4 because their defense has just been an embarrassment to begin this year. And look, Giants are without Malik Neighbors with a concussion for the second consecutive week. This kind of feels like the Carolina game all over again for Cincinnati, where their offense should be able to score enough points to outrun the Giants here, win the game by 10 like they did in Charlotte 2 weeks ago. I do like Cincinnati, and if it touches 3, I will very happily be on the Bengals in this game, even on the road.
It's been a 3.5 game.
Yeah, I know.
I made the number 4. So, I mean, that's very difficult. I mean, you're really kind of cutting it pretty close. But 4 pulls away from that 3. So a lot of times the 4 will tell you. And the game is at 3.5. It can't hold the 3. And there's a lot of kind of cross currents here. Once again, gun to my head, I'd probably play the Bengals because I still have so many questions about this Giants team. I have some questions about the Bengals team too. But I think like I said, I would not, if I was out there betting, I would not be playing this game. This looks too tough. But I kind of lean towards the Bengals in this one.
The Giants, without their best running back last week and their best receiver.
Yeah, no Singletary last week.
Terrific. They got over 100 yards. Their subs, their replacements got over 100 yards each.
The rookie Tracy was awesome last week.
I will tell you, too, that the Giant defense is good. It's better than a lot of teams and a lot of people thought. So I tell you what, the Giant defense is better than the Bengal defense, and so this one could be a little tricky here. That's the difference here, Jeff. Than when the Bengals went to Carolina.
Yep.
So, but again, this is the primetime game, so everybody's going to be involved with it, and of course, carryover will determine does this game, go lower. Or to continue to toggle, or does it continue? Does it go up, and do we hit 4? So that's gonna be what's dependent on it. Pro bettors will be looking for a 4 at least on this game.
And then Monday Night Football, it has, even by Jets standards, been a totally, absolutely ridiculous week. They come back from losing in London. They wait till Tuesday. By the way, I on my flight to the East Coast, got in early, got to the hotel, was able to sleep for a little bit. Got a whole bunch of texts saying, can you believe this? And I'm like, oh, they traded for Devontae Adams. No, they did not. They fired Robert Saleh.
Yeah.
Congratulations to anyone who cashed that ticket in faraway places. They make Jeff Ulbrich the interim head coach. They demote Nathaniel Hackett, which
to
might
something.
Which who knows what his position is now. We don't know what his position is now. Todd Downing, who did not have a ton of success as a play caller in Tennessee, is now the play caller for the Jets. I would argue the Hackett thing is a bigger deal than Saleh getting fired, honestly. With that said, the Bills go to New York. The Jets have beaten Buffalo 2 straight years in MetLife Stadium. The Bills are 2.5-point favorites. The total's 41. And all that leads me to is what are we getting out of either of these teams? Buffalo's looked bad the last 2 weeks. They get blasted by Baltimore. They have that totally ridiculous decision-making at the end of regulation against Houston. Where
the worst I've ever seen.
Where all you got to do, and there were people who were, I tweeted about this, and people were arguing with me on this, and I don't get it. Houston has all 3 of their timeouts. All you have to do in that situation is run the ball with Josh Allen 3 times, and you're in overtime, or Houston has no chance of getting in Fairbairn field goal range because they're out of timeouts. Instead, you throw the ball 3 times. You throw 3 straight incomplete passes. Houston keeps all their timeouts. They get great field position. They complete 1 pass, call a timeout, and Fairbairn makes a 59-yard kick, and you lose.
By the way, a great kicker. Great kicker.
Fairbairn's the best kicker in the NFL so far.
A great kicker.
Very good.
You know, I mean, what did they burn? Like 24 seconds or something?
I don't even think it was that.
I don't think it was that either. I think it was less than that.
It was nuts. It was nuts what happened at the end of that game last week with Buffalo. And also they have injury concerns too. James Cook has not practiced yet this week. Their best skill position player.
This is one of them where my numbers Sunday night came to the Bills 1.
Okay.
Now you start looking at situations. Now, how's this team going to respond? I know in baseball.
Who knows, Chris?
Yeah, I'd love to bet the team that just fired their manager, and it's worked really well over the years. Yeah, we don't have that much of.
So Chris, real quick, over the last 10 years,
it
is 56% to the cover for teams that fired their head coach in the following year.
Yeah. So that I wonder about
small
that.
favorite to taking the team that just fired.
Yes, a very small favorite. I don't know. I mean, there's so many mysteries in this game. I still think Buffalo's a pretty good team. That the last 2 games. It was the last game they definitely blew.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about anything else, but the Jets. Okay, they bring in Rodgers. Okay, 2 years ago, they bring in Rodgers. Has he improved that team in any way?
Well, you can't tell off last year. So far, they have the basically identical offensive numbers with the horrible quarterback play they got the last year as opposed to Rodgers this year, where, you have to wonder if that Week 3 game against New England was just a mirage for the Jet offense, where Rodgers looked like Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. The last 2 weeks, Aaron Rodgers has been terrible. And if look, how many times in Aaron Rodgers' career has he had the ball with a chance to win the game back-to-back weeks and didn't do it either time? It just doesn't happen.
Didn't even come close.
Wow,
really.
they missed a field goal against Denver, and then last week get it to the 30-yard line and throw a horrendous pick. Vinny, look, the biggest question for me is, like you said, how do they respond from the head coaching hire? And does this offense look any different at all with a different play caller? Because, look, Todd Downing is not a good offensive play caller. But the 3 of us on the desk are better than Nathaniel Hackett at calling plays, even with no NFL experience between the 3 of us.
I know that Hackett and Rodgers have a relationship, and that's probably why Hackett is still there, despite what Rodgers is saying.
Vinny.
Okay, here's the thing. The plays come in. Rodgers audibles. So it doesn't matter, Jeff, who's calling the plays. He is the offensive coordinator.
So I do want to bring something up on that real quick. I don't know if you saw this report last week on this, and this also is an issue too, and I would imagine this will change. Nathaniel Hackett was apparently giving Aaron Rodgers 3 plays to choose from, and Rodgers was choosing it at the offensive line, which
or saying none of the above.
So that's look, it is. Even by Jet standards, this has been a wackadoo week, which kind of makes me think they're going to win the game. Or they're going to lose by 3 touchdowns. High variance result, potentially,
high variance,
for the Jets, who, by the way, get your Steelers next week. So
look at this, back-to-back at MetLife.
Yeah, back-to-back primetime at MetLife, no less. Craziness, to say the very least. All right. That's all the time we have. We went over, but before we go, we have to give Chris his plays.
Yeah,
Chris, you're trying to bounce back. It was a rough 0-5 last week, but look,
what's the season?
You're still in great shape because you're still 18-13 overall, which
money.
We're taking that anytime you can at 58.5%.
58%,
so far for the year. 5 plays for Chris this week, 4 in college and 1 in the NFL. Chris,
UL Monroe. What's that? -6.5.
Yes, sir.
Alabama, laying the 22 or
22, yep.
yeah, you might be able to find a little bit better. Iowa -3. Make sure you get -3.
Okay.
You don't want to lay any more than that. And USC, again, make sure you get +3.5. I'm going against my Penn State. Again, I'm sure my daughter's not watching. She'd want to disown. No, she would never disown me. And then I like the Broncos +3 in the pros.
So 4 college, 1 NFL.
Yeah.
Bouncing back this week.
I feel
pretty good. By the way, Lisa Monroe has been the darling for you this year.
I kind of had them picked at the
3-0
beginning.
with you, Monroe, this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a team that I had pegged at the beginning of the year. I've had them as one of the worst teams in college football over the last couple of years. But I saw a couple of things in the offseason where this team might be improving a little bit, and they did.
It'll be a lot of fun to watch, as always. We'll be back tomorrow, Alex White and I, 8 a.m. Get you ready for the college slate. Monster wanted that.
Guys, you got to tune into that show.
I mean,
you got to tune in.
What a slate we got to preview for everyone tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Drew Dog and Jerry, behind the glass, thank you as always. Vinny Magliulo, Chris Andrews, pleasure as always, fellas. We'll see you again next week. Jimmy Vacarro, of course, is thank you to wherever Jimmy may be right now. Whether it's the spa, behind the counter, who knows?
Afternoon briefing.
Afternoon briefing, potentially for Jimmy. You never know.
Might be in his massage chair.
Anywhere's in play. I'm Jeff Parles. We'll see you again next week on this show. Also, again, please tune in tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Alex and I get you ready for college football on a big Saturday on Sports by the Book.